Shaftsbury Select Board meeting to order this evening. This is our first evening without Craig Bruder, our chair. We welcome Tim Scoggins, our new Select Board member. We're very happy to have him on board. I would ask if anyone has a conflict of interest with any item on the agenda.
No.
Nope. No.
Okay. The next order of business would be election of officers. We need to elect a chair, a vice chair, and Margie, do we need to elect a secretary?
We
Remember
have
if we
never
have
in the
done that?
past.
Okay.
It's not a bad idea. If I get run over by a truck and I can't be here. But rules of procedure really only state, I think it was chair and vice chair.
I'm comfortable with that if the board
Yeah,
is. I
yeah.
think between the members of the board, we can figure out who can take minutes. If everyone agrees to that. Does that sound fine?
Yes.
Agreement.
Then I would call for nominations for the chair.
I nominate Karen Mellinger for chair.
Second.
Do we have any other nominations? Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I guess maybe I'll abstain. Thank you. We need a nomination for vice chair.
I nominate Carl.
Ken nominates Carl Corman.
Second.
Mitch Ray seconds. Do we have any other nominations? All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll abstain.
I know the feeling. Okay, and again, we will determine as needs arise who will take minutes if we don't have
Sure.
Sean or Margie or someone else to do it for us. The next order of business would be the approval of minutes. We have two sets of minutes. I think everyone has seen them, I hope. We have September 23rd, which was a special meeting. That was when we interviewed...
Did you ever approve the 16th?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Oh, okay.
Yes, we did that on the 30th.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So you
That's fine.
have that.
Yep,
Okay,
we did
the
that.
23rd, okay.
So I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes. First,
For which date are we talking?
this would be September 23rd.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Does anyone have any additions?
For the 23rd we're talking about?
The 23rd, yep.
Just that the announcements, Ordinary Heroes is at Chocolate Barn and town offices on number 5.
Okay, available at the town office also? Okay. Were there any other corrections? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so that's 500. We have then the minutes of Monday, September 30th. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
And Harrington seconds. Any changes, corrections? Nothing? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Do that. And we have the warrants. Margie, I'm only seeing one, is that
Only
right?
one.
Okay, this is a check warrant, number 12, in the amount of $25,717. The items over $1,000, John Ray and Son, $1,500. Henry Martinka, $1,347. That's for the Howard Park mower repairs. Sycamore Landscaping, $2,000. That was for the cemetery mowing. TAM, $6,380. And that is for one of their monthly billings. And VEMR's, the quarterly VEMR's, $6,850, and the rest are Green Mountain Power. They're all miscellaneous amounts.
What is Beamers?
VEMR's is the retirement
Fund,
fund.
Vermont Municipal
Our retirement fund for our
Employment
employees?
Retirement
for
System.
employees,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, what was the one from, I think, what was that mower, Karen?
That was the Howard Park mower.
Okay.
That mower is, it's getting quite old, and it's something that the town has been putting
Trying to.
aside money now. I think we're getting close to what we need for
Yeah.
that new mower down at Howard Park. But this was a end-of-the-year repair that had to be done, probably the end-of-the-year servicing, too. All right, did we have a motion to approve and a second? Does anyone have any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Announcement. Does anyone have any announcements? Tim?
No.
Ken?
The school is having a walk-to-school day on Wednesday. This is International Walk-to-School Day. Shaftsbury is participating as part of our partnership with the Safe Routes to School program.
Great.
And so we'd love to see anybody who'd like to show up and encourage kids to walk to school. So we've got it divided. We're calling it our east versus west face-off. Everybody east of 7A, who lives east of 7A in Shaftsbury, is going to meet at Howard Park between 8:15 and 8:30. For the westies, the hollowers, they are meeting at T&M on Church Street between 8:15 and 8:30, and then at 8:30 we'll walk in.
That's this Wednesday, the 9th?
Yes.
That's a great
At what time?
idea.
Get there between 8:15 and 8:30. 8:30 we start walking.
That's terrific.
One more announcement here.
Nope.
Ken,
I'm done.
nothing?
On October 20th, the Historical Society will be having a open house and a talk on Civil War medicine by Phyllis Chapman from 2 to 4 p.m. Should be nice, should be interesting. I think she has all the tools used during the Civil War. I think they may be looking for
They use
volunteers.
tools instead
You
of
call it,
medicine,
Mitch,
right?
open- Civil War what?
So it's an open house, it's
Yeah, back then
a
they were called tools.
discussion on Civil War medicine.
Medicine, okay.
Is she bringing her own leeches?
You never know.
And when is that?
October 20th, 2 to 4. so-
2 to
4
4.
p.m.
2 to 4. Okay, great.
Yes.
Carl,
No,
anything?
no.
I don't have, well, actually, I guess I do. And I'm thinking this because we didn't, I guess we announced it at our meeting last week, and we were the only ones there. The town did receive word that that our Bike and Ped grant was accepted. So that was a supplemental grant we had put in for the completion of the corner, the sidewalk corner, with some pedestrian safety improvements. So we were very happy to hear that. That was a grant that went in for close to $100,000. And the nice thing about those additional funds is that the match for the town, whereas transportation enhancement funds are a 20% match, this is only a 10% match. So, and we do have those match funds in hand, so that was really very nice.
When is that project set to start, in the spring? or-
Well, we're hoping. We're moving through the permitting processes now, and that's the goal, is to begin construction next year.
Congratulations on getting that done.
Oh, I think, yeah, well, congratulations go to a lot of folks, so yourself included, for helping with some of that supplemental information, certainly Margie for her help, and so it's really, really a nice piece of news. Okay, any public comments? I guess we just have Chad, who'll be joining us, and Derek, so, and that brings up our next item, which is a discussion on the constable positions in Shaftsbury and how we go forward. Mitch has been working on this, I think, working some with Kenny and as the liaison to the constables. And it's an issue that the town has been involved in now for several years, since the state had basically changed some statute language, and constables now are required to have certification and training in law enforcement. And it's a somewhat expensive process, and the town had been, the select board had felt that rather than funding that kind of training in a situation where right now we have constables that are elected for a one-year position. And this, I believe, I remember the training can run upwards of $800 per person. So it didn't seem to be the reasonable thing to do, to go forward with that for one-year positions until we really knew what we were going to be asking our constables to do outside of some of the statutory responsibilities that they can fulfill now. And so, again, we've been reviewing this over the last several years, really. And there have been a number of routes that we could take. One of the things that we chose to do several years ago, and I think it's worked out very well, has been to contract with the Bennington County Sheriffs. And we were very fortunate back in, I think, Chad, it was maybe 2009. And maybe it was through Homeland Security money, I don't know. It was a COPS grant. And we were able to get an hourly rate of $25.50 subsidized. So our effective rate was, I think it was around, well, in any case, $17, about $17.
67 an hour, yeah. About
70 cents, as opposed to the full $25.50. And we have had the benefit of 20 hours a week of sheriff services. And I know that as we looked at this and tried to determine, because there have been some calls for, as much policing as we can afford. Let's put it that way. I think the more we can get always in a small town, the better. So Mitch had taken it on, and with a direction from the board, to take a look at this situation and what would be involved, and primarily because we have a situation now with a first constable who is actually a certified law enforcement officer. So should the town make any changes, it's a little bit different from the position that we were previously in. The town, again, right now, does elect a first and second constable. The second constable's, it's not a requirement. That is not a state requirement. The first constable is, that a town has a first constable. So I'm going to turn it over to Mitch, I think, to give a little bit more of the background, some of the things he's worked on. Again, I think the issue has to do with the fact that we have an elected position now. We have the opportunity, if the town chose to turn that into either an elected position for 2 years, up to 2 years, as opposed to the one, or the position could be an appointed position up to 3 years. So with that, I will...
Yeah, there's two issues. If we were to go forward with this, there's 2 changes that need to happen. And one change can happen without any changes to the constable direction, and that's to change it from elected to an appointed position. To do anything, that needs to happen first, and that's completely separate from giving the constable local policing authority. I mean, that's completely separate. I mean, that's, I'd say, I mean, I guess the select board could give him policing authority as an elected official, but then we have no control. So if it's an appointed by the select board, he serves at the pleasure of the select board and can be removed for cause, and we can direct his focus on what we want him to do. Or, we can give him police authority, or we can keep him just the way he is. That's up to the select board if he's appointed. If he's elected, he has certain rights, certain obligations which are outlined in the VLCT book, which basically have certain powers as enumerated in VSA 1936A. These include the power to serve civil or criminal process, destroy animals, kill injured deer, assist the health officer in discharge of his duties, serve as district officer, remove disorderly people from town meetings, and collect taxes.
Now, all of those duties, as I understand it, are not really considered law enforcement.
Well, I don't know, serving papers, I mean.
Well, is that
wouldn't
more
be
like
law enforcement.
ordinance?
Okay, that's not
I
enforcement.
mean,
Okay.
I think that would
I mean,
be
that's-
someone who would be, they would,
That's-
if a dog was being impounded, for instance, those kinds of things. So, right now, they have those statutory powers, as I understand it.
And like I said, if we went from an elected to an appointed position, we could leave it just like that. And they could still have that, and we'd appoint them for 2 years. I mean, Chad, if you want to come on up here, we can talk too. I mean, basically, we were talking about constable with policing options. And my idea was to be a complement to the sheriffs I mean, I'm not sure if that's doable or not, so. My suggestion would be, I would like to see, if we're gonna go down this path, to change the election, or change the position from an elected to an appointed position. And that really has no changes to the duties of the constable at this time. That, if we do that in the December vote with the ballot for the garage, it would give us 3 months to work out some sort of plan as to how we want to do it. We would do it with the appointed at next town meeting. Appointment after the first meeting of the next town meeting. I mean, term would expire. I don't think we could expire his term now anyways.
No.
It would be anything that would happen at next town meeting. But I figure if we get it on the ballot and get the voters' blessings, we could move forward with more discovery on duties if we decide to go that way. Cost, vehicle, communication, transportation. It's just something that, there are costs involved. But I've looked at some of the budget items, and I think there's room to, in the public safety section, to manipulate funds a little bit to make sure that they're funded. Now, Chad, I got the contract from.
Why don't you introduce Chad?
This is Chad
Chad
Schmidt,
Schmidt.
who is our Bennington sheriff.
County Sheriff,
Bennington
yep.
County Sheriff.
Sorry about that.
For the viewers. I knew he was.
I hope most of them know me by now.
I bet they do.
Now, I
For
can,
good reason.
Right.
so basically, the COP grant ends November 30th. So that's the end of the 4-year contract that we had signed in
Right.
2009. And if we were to keep going at 20 hours a week, which is what we've had, it would come out to about $510 a week, unless there are some other rate concessions or something along those lines, which would come down $510 a week, which is $26,500, which is about $156 per week increase over what we got with the cops grant. I don't know if my idea was to have, if we had a constable, the select board would be more in charge of what local policing options a constable would have. Now, Chad said that basically we could tell him or ask him to do pretty much anything that we wanted him to do. or, that he should be doing and or whatever, and he'd work with us.
And for the record, we have. I mean, Margie and I are in contact quite a bit. I get calls from residents.
I have had
We
no
do
one say anything derogatory about the sheriff. Everyone's been positive. That I've heard. I haven't heard anything. I'm just looking at exploring different options for the town. And I think when I talked to you, I stated that, the constable is local. He's here 24/7 except when he's not working. He has a daughter in school, and he knows some of the teachers, the parents, and so forth, just from being involved that way. Now, I don't know if that's something that makes a difference to the voters or not. I personally would think it would be better to have someone that knows the community a little better, but that's neither here. You basically, when I threw out something that we wanted about town, person in town being known around town, that you said that something about, or I thought you said that you could work something like that out with us, where we'd have a special sheriff appointed to Shaftsbury only or something?
We only have, probably a core group of 5 deputies that go out and do patrol on a full-time basis, and there are several that only do it on a part-time basis that retired from either Manchester PD or Bennington PD, and they don't want to work full-time anymore. So we keep that a narrowly focused group because it's a specialized group of people with certain knowledge. The other deputies that I hire don't have that same level of training, and it wouldn't be prudent to put them out answering calls and doing that kind of thing. So you already have, a small group of deputies that are doing that now. The issue with limiting it to one deputy, for instance, a few months back we had issues on Cleveland Ave, and I think we had to sit in someone's driveway at 6 a.m. The next week we had problems at Howard Park after midnight. Well, that same person that's working at 6 a.m. And working an 8-hour shift isn't going to want to go and address the midnight complaint. So by having 4 or 5 different people patrolling your town, it gives us the flexibility of a 24-hour coverage. So that's what you lose by having only one person doing it, is they can't be everyone to everybody, and they can't be in all places. So that allows us to focus that. The other issue is when there were a lot of break-ins on the back roads, we had upwards of many times 2 deputies, sometimes 3 deputies patrolling the back roads at the same time. We have that ability because we have 32 vehicles and 42 deputies. So, by limiting it to one constable, he's only effective as he's going to be driving that one single road at that one time throughout the day when he can do that. So I think the board needs to decide, what route they want to take. If you put all your eggs in that basket, you're going to limit the availability of having the resources that my agency has, the relationship that we have with the Vermont State Police. And it's clearly, once you do the math, it's going to cost you a lot more than $25.50. I mean, I don't charge you for mileage, I don't charge you for the cruiser. You wouldn't be able, with $24,000, you'd be lucky to put him out there for 8 hours a week, if you factor into all the other costs.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Would you be supportive of if we went with a constable, to then provide a reduced level of support from the sheriff's office so that we have the benefit of all worlds, that is a resident as well as the function that your office provides?
No, I'm not going to enter into, you have to decide as a board, do you want to go the constable route, or are you going to continue a contract with the sheriff's office?
And is there a reason for that?
There is. We've tried it in the past. It doesn't work. The not necessarily jurisdictional issues, but who's in charge of who. The constable will want to work the hours when he wants to work, and then we're going to get the stuff, that he can't fit into his schedule. Residents, who are they going to call? Are they going to call the constable first and then us? Are they going to call us and then we decide what the constable answers? And it's just a whole menagerie of issues that at $25.50, it's not worth it to my agency to enter into that sort of agreement. So, typically boards look at constables when they're not happy with the level of service that we're providing. And I'm not hearing that you're having an issue with the level of service, and you're looking at something that's going to cost you more. My folks are local. My agency is local. The 42 deputies live in all of the communities throughout Bennington County. My captain lives here in Shaftsbury. So you do have local connection to my agency. And like I said, if you want to limit it to one person patrolling your town, one deputy, we can do that. But we're going to have to package that in 40 hours that deputy is going to be comfortable doing. And when you get the complaints at 6 o'clock in the morning and he's scheduled to work 4 to midnight, then those things are going to have to be handled some other way.
You said that this has not worked in the past. How long has this policy been in place? That it's either all or nothing?
Yeah, for as long as I can remember in my agency, going back past when I wasn't sheriff. And speaking with other sheriffs, they're the same way. Keith Clark in Wyndham County, if some agencies hire the state police, then it's the state police that handles it, and the sheriff's department won't enter into a contract.
How did Pownell do it? Wasn't there a situation in Pownell, and this is going back several years anyway, and I just remembered reading it in the paper, that they had a constable, and then did the constable become a Bennington sheriff, and then assigned to Pownell, or they had a unique sort of situation, as I remember?
We were entering into talks back in the same time frame, 2009, and I was actually here at the meeting on Monday, and this board took the hours that were left in the COPS
That's
grant.
right.
So when I got there Thursday, there was really nothing, nothing great to
Offer them.
inspire them to
Yeah.
make the transition.
I
But the same would be true with them, where, I have deputies that live in Pownell, if they wanted to enter in a contract with me and only have that deputy patrolling within those constraints that we're going to have about his time management and when he or she wants to work, we could do that. But they're still on the constable. They still utilize the constable. So they would be a better, agency or town to call to figure out those hidden costs that, that you probably haven't explored yet.
Now, do you provide dispatch services for Pownell, or how does that work?
I don't know who, I think they have to pay the Bennington Police Department.
I see.
The Bennington Police Department.
Is that it?
yes.
I have my own dispatch, and then at the nights and weekends, Wyndham County Sheriff's Department dispatches for me.
I see. And I'm just wondering, in terms of our own contract with you, one of my questions was, if we looked at a new contract, I mean, again, this is over in about 2 months.
Right.
Would it be the $25.50?
Yeah, I will honor that price. At that price, I lose money on patrol contracts. Our motivation for doing it is so that I can hire a core group of individuals who are trained to do this sort of thing. And this sort of allows me to not lose as much as I would.
Right.
And then the other reason is that everyone here pays a county tax. I get a $230,000 budget from the county that provides certain things that the statute says the county government has to provide me. So by me losing $5 or $6 an hour on a patrol contract, it's sort of me paying back what I'm getting from you anyway. So I would honor that $25.50 price. If I had to include all my costs for the car and what it cost me for wages, it would be, you'd be looking at almost the $40 range. Because like I said, I don't charge you for mileage or the cruiser. So that's why, when I get nervous when I hear constables, because you're getting a price that I know that you can't beat with a constable, which leads me to believe that, if people are feeling that there are a level of service issues, then that's the discussion we should be having.
I think the point of it is quite simply that we're looking for augment our present level of oversight, if you will. As you know better than I, there's been rashes of burglaries, which not even this board has been immune from, and this town's certainly not at historic levels, frankly.
Right.
And the point is not to have all or nothing type of relationship with the police enforcement, but with the expectation that the support would be welcome, because we're all in the same boat, if you will, and that the issue of the burglaries and whatever else is not going to go away soon, and the town, as a member of the board, and the board in toto, dare I speak for the board, is looking to show the town that we are aware of their concerns, and we're trying to do what we can, not that we are trying to even cut back the cost, but rather provide the best police enforcement and oversight and protection for our residents. And I'm not quite sure how they'll feel about, well, it's an all or nothing type of thing, take it or leave it. That's the way the policy is.
No, I understand your point. The only thing I can tell you is that your return on investment for a constable is going to be a lot less than just paying me additional money to patrol how many hours you want. And so if it's a fundamental issue of wanting a constable versus the sheriff's department, that's why the choice is made. Because given more resources, we can do more, and I can do more than the constable with less money. And I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. So it doesn't make sense unless there are some sort of level of service that you don't feel that you're getting from me for you to change to a constable.
No, I think the point is we're very happy with the level of service from you. We're trying to augment that level by ways that would be beneficial for the town and for the costs of the town, et cetera.
Well, and I think, the board really does need to be aware that when we talk about augmenting, we are talking money. I mean, as it is now, if we were to enter into another contract, even if it was from November 30th through June 30th, we're only looking at 16 hours a week within the budget that we are under right now. We have a little less than $12,000 to spend. And, at $25.50, that's what it gives us, 16 hours a week. So when this contract ends in a couple of months, we're losing 4 hours. And unless this board decides to overspend that line item, whether it's, increasing the sheriff's hours, or I shouldn't say increasing, but keeping them constant with what we have right now.
Which is 20 hours.
Which is 20 hours, yeah. I mean, we're going to go over budget in that line item. So I hear exactly what Chad is saying. I mean, we can look at a constable, but as a law enforcement officer, but whether even our current constable is going to be able to devote 20 hours a week to the position, I don't know. I mean, my understanding is that individual has a full-time job, and I think it's important for us not to look at this, sort of individual specific. We are lucky that our constable has law enforcement powers, but if we're looking to change the position and the duties, I think it should be done in terms of what is in the best interests of the town, as opposed to, we happen to have this person right now who could fulfill those duties and save us the law enforcement training. Because I think that needs to be kept in mind in terms of any budget that we prepare. The current constable may not put his name in for appointment. So, I think it's important not to make decisions based on an individual as opposed to the position. Does that make
Chad, can I
sense?
ask you a question? Since Mitch noted that if we have an appointed position, we decide what authority that appointment carries. And even if we had the ability or the authority to give that person comparable authority to your deputies, but we chose not to give that person those comparable authorities, but to give them the authority of, patrolling the roads, of animal control, of, I don't remember what are some of the other things.
Serving notice.
The less than criminal issues. Is that something that would also trigger your policy and say, no, I can't live with that?
The only way we're going to be in conflict is if you buy a car for your constable, you mark it up that says constable, you put him in a uniform, and you send him out in your community to do police work, however we want to define police work.
So what I just described would be considered police work, in your mind?
No, I think if it's like an animal control type deal,
not law.
that's separate and apart. I want there to be a real clear line for the community that what our roles are.
And if that constable were to, we gave him authority to contact you, your office, that he is in a situation, that would be okay?
Sure, sure.
The VLCT, when this was all being shaken up and all the towns were trying to get used to this new statutory requirement to have criminal justice training council training for constables in order to become a law enforcement officer, published, I have several articles, and I have one, if we have a full-time constable, then there are, obviously, the training that's due, the number of hours required is different than for a part-time. Part-time constables must satisfactorily complete 58 hours of classroom instruction in order to receive a provisional 12-month certification. This certification allows part-time constables to exercise law enforcement powers, but only under the direct supervision and control of fully certified law enforcement officers. When I was following up with VLCT, the question was, whether, in order to have law enforcement authority, is the VSP willing to provide the direct supervision of the constable in that instance? That, to me, would mean that unless we had a certified police officer voluntarily in a constable position or appointed, either way, elected or appointed, we couldn't have anybody else off the street that went through training on a part-time basis because they would have to be working under your supervision.
That's partly true. What you're explaining is anyone's ability to get a part-time certified law enforcement position. You go to the academy for a week. They throw all kinds of information at you, and then they send you back to your agency with a provisional certification, and you have a whole nother group of things that you have to meet and training that you have to do. During that year, you have to be in direct supervision by somebody else who's already certified. Once you pass all of those hurdles, you are then a part-time certified police officer and don't have to work under the direct supervision of another officer. So if you had a constable that,
Really?
if you had a
Okay.
constable that got a part-time certification and they got through that 12-month process and the academy certifies them as a part-time certified police officer in the state, they would not have to work under direct supervision of another law enforcement officer. The only caveat would be that they could only patrol in your community for up to
Yeah.
32 hours.
Yeah. Oh, right, it's the 28 to 32 hour.
Right.
And no more than that. So as a reminder, the league says, constables with full law enforcement authority have the power of search, seizure, and arrest within the municipality. Generally, the only difference between constables with full law enforcement authority and other law enforcement officers is that their jurisdiction is limited to the boundaries of the municipality they serve. So that's something else to think about, I think, because it sounds to me that we're trying to groom the equivalent of a police officer under another title through another venue, another avenue, rather than looking also at, and this isn't to discourage this approach, but rather than looking at possible contracts for rural policing, let's say from Bennington or whoever else might be out there to do that. I'd like to also confirm, Chad, that a part-time constable would not need to be under your supervision.
Right.
Because that made it sound like you would have to have the constable on the precise shift that your deputies are out there in order for this
Right,
to
no,
work.
what that's referring to is if you had someone off the street, no law enforcement experience, they went to the police academy, they passed the polygraph examination, they passed the written exam, they passed the psychological evaluation, and they attended the 58-hour part-time
Yeah,
academy.
right.
At the end of that process, they would then be provisionally certified for 12 months. During that 12 months, they would have to do another prescription of more training. They'd have to ride along with a certified field training officer, and then submit their packet to the Vermont Police Academy for part-time certification. Once that complete process
Another
is
110
over,
hours of training is
Right.
needed.
once that process is over, and that person comes back to your community, they're certified and they don't need to work under the direction of anybody supervising them. But they would have that limit on how many hours they could work during the week.
Yeah.
That would be the only limit.
The only town that I know where it became successful, in my experience, because I don't know Pownell well, was Royalton, Vermont, up in Windsor County. And I do remember their constable taking this on over a 2 or 3 year period of doing the training. And by the time I left that area, he was and had been for several years their constable with law enforcement powers. Working symbiotically, I don't know what the role of the sheriff was in town at that point, or Bethel was next door with the Bethel State Police Barracks. So that was the only other information I can contribute, really.
Does the select board now tell you or ask you what hours, or do you make up your 20 hours basically as you see fit for the?
We do both, actually. We keep it random until there are special circumstances that may dictate, okay, we should be out earlier in the morning, and usually or later at night. That's usually when either Margie tells me that, hey, we have a person who's complaining, or if my office receives a complaint directly from one of your citizens, we try to incorporate that into our patrol work. You also gain the benefit of, I have contracts with Arlington, Sunderland, Woodford, and Stamford, and when let's say we're not even in your town, but we're in Arlington, and the state police call and say, hey, there's a complaint in Shaftsbury, can you handle it? We'll log off of our time clock, if you will, from Arlington, and come down to Shaftsbury and handle that complaint, and vice versa. And then we make up that time, because we want to, what it does is it allows us to, you're basically getting reactive enforcement without us being here in town, and you're not paying for us to just be at your ready. So we juggle our resources as needed when the calls come in. The proactive stuff is more what Margie and the board or even the public is free to, make suggestions. I get hits on our website all the time where people say, there's speeders, going down my road at 6 o'clock in the morning. Can you address it? And we'll respond, and we take care of that.
You just said something about Arlington. Now, I thought the state police has a contract with Arlington too. It's the sheriff and.
No, just us. State police have a contract in Dorset.
Dorset only.
Yeah.
I misunderstood that last week, that's all.
Can I just clarify what, if we had constables appointed, and we actually beefed up the budget, which is only $200 now for the constables, but I'm assuming, or am I wrong, that it would not be considered law enforcement if, for instance, we had someone that was using a burn barrel, and we have a burn barrel ordinance? Is that the sort of thing where that could be part of their position, to go up to that property and say, you are in violation of, the burn barrel ordinance?
Yeah, I don't see any issue with that. I think it's the active and proactive law enforcement where they're out enforcing motor vehicle laws, they're responding to complaints, they're being dispatched to calls. That's a completely separate area than, barking dog complaints, those sorts of issues, the burn barrel stuff.
Yeah.
Not that we can certainly respond to that.
Right.
And we do on occasion, but.
So would you say that it's anything that isn't a misdemeanor or a felony, we could do ourselves?
No, I would say that it's as long as you're not sending your constable out in uniform to enforce things of the criminal nature and being and out doing motor vehicle and traffic stuff. Yeah.
Chad, if we want more policing, do you have the capacity to give us more than the hours we're currently contracted?
Absolutely. If you want 24/7, 365 days a year, we can do it.
You want an office over here?
You put me in a substation, I'll park a car there. I mean, it's that.
When the contract runs out, you said you didn't think the rates were gonna change?
No, I'll
I realize this is,
I'll honor that rate.
way out in left field, but you got any idea how long you might be able to hold that? How many years?
You know, depending on how, it would depend on if the board wanted to enter into an agreement, I'd look at what term you're looking at, and we'll try to lock in the prices. The things that aren't really fixed for me are the gasoline prices. I mean, and right now, they've been going down.
I got a business, I know all about that.
But, it's not uncommon for the deputies to do 100-plus miles in your town on a patrol.
Yeah.
If I were to charge you the 55 cents a mile that the federal government pays, that's $55, every time we're here for 2 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
So I try to work with and give you as much as I can.
Yeah.
But the 25, 50, like I said, having the patrols allows me to hire specifically trained people that want to do this type of law enforcement. And that allows me to do other things in the communities. And so I'm okay with, as a business person, taking loss on that kind of thing, because I think we're providing a vital service to communities, and we're doing it for a rate that no one else can match. I mean, the
Well,
state
I've
police
hired
are,
your units when I had jobs,
yeah,
where I had to have,
traffic control.
traffic control.
Yep. I mean, the state police are at $55 an hour.
Yeah.
It's more than twice what I'm charging. So we try to stay competitive, but at the same time, I want to make sure that we're providing the level of service that you're all expecting.
Right.
And when I hear, we want to use our constable, to me, that translates, well, we're not exactly happy with the level of service. And so I hope we're addressing
That, I
the,
think, is really a misunderstanding.
okay.
because
No, that's good to hear. I mean,
I
that's,
think that we've been exploring this as a board ever since the state, started talking about this law enforcement, so we've really been, I think, struggling to understand, and of course, the state put it off for a little while, and I think that really, what I'm hearing from the board is an effort to get as much coverage, and if there's an option for local options, all the better. But it really has nothing to do with the level of service that we've gotten, because I would attest to the fact that we can call you guys. If we want you to go into, court for us, you'll do it.
but I want to make sure that you're including me in that local option, because I really feel that
Yeah, I understand.
that we are local, and I do as much for this board as Paul Doucette does for the Bennington Select Board. I mean, that's my role here. We treat these contracts, we understand customer service, we're a business, so we're gonna do what you ask us to do in confines of what we're allowed to do, obviously, but, we're aiming to please, and we want to make sure that we're fulfilling your law enforcement needs.
Chad, can I ask one follow-up question? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
So you had the 5 full-time sheriffs, which you say are more specialized than the part-time deputies. So do they have full-time, or full certification, law enforcement certification?
Yes, most of the deputies that are out doing patrol are full-time certified.
Full-time certified, okay.
Many of the ones that are doing it on a part-time basis are still full-time certified, but they have moved on from their full-time position at like Bennington Police Department,
Okay.
Manchester PD, and so they
Okay.
only do it on a part-time basis. I do have deputies that are only part-time certified that have been doing it for 17 to 20 years that will do patrols on occasion. But they're
But they can
trained
only
and
be
meet with
out
32 hours a week is their max.
32 max, but they have,
No, because they're fully certified part-time.
okay.
So they
That's
don't
what's
fit
so
into that
confusing.
12, I know, it is confusing, very confusing.
Okay.
But the
20
core
to
group of
32
patrol
hours.
folks are full-time certified, and that's all they do for my agency.
I just find a disconnect in the number of hours, why at 32 versus 33 hours a week do you suddenly not need the supervision of a law enforcement officer?
Well, it's not,
I don't get it.
the supervision part is only for that 12-month period when you're not
Just for
certified.
provisional.
once you're part-time certified, what the academy is saying is, if you're going to do this for more than 32 hours a week, you need to come to the academy and
Okay.
take the 16 weeks.
Okay. Yeah, this is
'Cause
obviously
it's a
outdated.
full-time, it'd be a
Some of this
full-time
information.
position, full-time job.
Yeah.
So,
So, again, I think the decision that I'm hearing, that the board, if we take it one step at a time, it would be really to have a discussion about whether we want to present the question to the town, because this does require a town vote by the residents, as to whether they would agree that we should move from an elected position, a one-year elected position for our constables, to an appointed position, which again provides more flexibility, I think, for the board, for the select board, to indicate what kinds of activities the constable would be involved in. I do think immediately, another decision that this board needs to make is whether we want to supplement, well, it's not supplement, it would be overspend our law enforcement budget, unless Chad, well, I'm not going to go there, never mind. Because it would cost us, in order to keep the same number of hours we have right now, to be an additional $3,000, a little over $3,000 between, that we'd overexpend the budget. So otherwise, we are back to 16 hours a week within the budgetary constraints. So, and that's really isn't anything that Chad can help us with, other than he's already answered the fact that he would be willing to extend the contract. But I think that contract, we would need to make that decision probably within the next meeting or so. And of course, this is an opportune discussion because we're going to be entering budget season. So as much as we want as many hours as possible, that comes with a price tag, whether it's outfitting potentially a constable, or going with additional hours from the sheriff's department, so.
Yeah, I have another question. I seem to remember, Mitch, when we were talking with Paul McGann, that,
And here he is.
and Paul,
And Bob.
I didn't want to have to paraphrase you. We're talking about law enforcement activities and the ability to practice law enforcement once you're full-time certified. Is it possible to take a range of law enforcement activities and parse out from that whole broad-based authority, or the whole list of what you are allowed to do, and say you can only do a subset of these activities? Do we know that? For instance, I remember a lot of discussion 5 years ago about traffic stops and how traffic stops go bad continually. They're just it's a bad deal, because you never know what situation you're walking into. Could the town of Shaftsbury limit, let's say we wanted you to provide law enforcement officers for us instead of just doing traffic duty? Could we limit what your deputies are doing and tell them no traffic stops?
you could, but I don't know what you would gain.
Well, I know, I'm
Yeah,
just,
But, I mean,
if we're still worried about the liability of and safety of our own constables, not constable, or you, I don't know. Just take it as a rhetorical question.
Yeah, I don't know that, the deputies that are out here patrolling have discretion, and I wouldn't want to interfere, that,
Right.
if they find a vehicle that they feel they need to pull over for whatever reason, then
They would.
they need to have the ability to do that.
Yeah, okay, okay.
As far as I don't know what you can set your priorities
Yeah.
with my agency, as far as, we want you to focus on, just patrol the back roads. We don't care how many motor vehicle stops you make out on 7A, we just want the residents out in the in the hollow or wherever to feel that there's a law enforcement presence, maybe try to prevent some of these break-ins. That you can do. Or it could be, we're getting speeding on 7A all the time, we just want you to focus all your efforts right there on that strip because we're getting a lot of complaints. I'm already allowing you to do most of that, and when you tell me, there's an issue, we respond. And we adjust our law enforcement priorities based on what you tell us is the town's desire. So you're kind of already doing that, but you're not saying don't do it, you're just saying we want you to focus your efforts here.
Okay, but let's just say, for instance, I asked for more coverage down on Dunham Avenue. We have parking violations. And we now have an ordinance in place.
Right.
So if we get you down there, and then suddenly a deputy senses something really strange about a person or vehicle, that could unfold
Into a traffic
potentially to
stop?
search, seizure, and arrest.
Sure.
Okay.
But let me ask you a question, Margie. If we decided to have a constable who had limited authority and giving tickets for illegally parked cars like meter maids do that are not police in any city, that's something that constable could do. And if that constable saw something that looked awry, quickly contact the sheriff's department and not spend the money to have sheriff's department, write parking tickets.
But the sheriff's department has to be available to respond.
Sure.
Well, that's
That's not like calling.
Yeah,
you
we
have
may
you have
or,
scheduled shifts.
right, we may or may not be
So-
here or, close by. If we're close by, we're gonna respond.
Right.
If I don't have anybody out working at all, then
Hey, I'm saying if
it's gonna be
something goes
difficult.
awry, if you walk in your backyard and you see some strange figure walking around your house out in the middle of the woods, who the hell cares what time it is? You're gonna call the police and say,
Right.
"I've got
Yeah.
No,
strange guy
somebody's
walking
gonna show up, whether it's,
Same thing as if you
I
see
don't think
somebody-
I'm just trying to figure out, in my own mind, if there are limitations on what a sheriff's deputy can do for us
around." I see.
in a given situation, in the role they currently play.
I guess
sounds like no.
my understanding is
No.
they can do everything that
right,
we
they're
need
full
police
law
to do.
enforcement officers.
right,
And I
but if
don't
you
know.
need us to narrow or limit our focus to parking issues or burn barrel issues, and as in the past, we do that.
Right.
We do whatever you need us to do. Or it's directing traffic at the Historical Society. We
Right.
took that out of the patrol hours, I believe, so.
Tim, you had a comment?
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of times the language change that in state legislature that had some effect on the constable. Did we used to get more out of our constable than we're getting now?
Well, we had, positions changed through the years. Historically, the constables in town, it was essentially a volunteer position. And we had folks that did it for many, many years in a row. And they would do things like help the animal control officer enforce some of the licensing issues that we have. So that when the town clerk gets, the list comes to the select board of those folks that haven't licensed their dogs, the constable was many times involved in contacting those people. Now,
And we
when-
believe that the constable cannot do that now?
No, they can. I think, and Bob is here, and Paul is, they're both here now. Thank you for coming, Bob Perry, our second constable. And
7:30. I hope we're not too late.
you were told 7:30? I'm
Well,
sorry.
not
that
too
it
late.
should have, you're not too late, although we had begun the discussion. And Paul McGann, our first constable, is here.
Can I just?
Absolutely.
If you don't mind.
Bob, do you want to come up to the table, and Paul?
Yeah.
Sure. I will tell you that black chair is a little suspect over there, so you might want to pull if there's a single wooden one over
No, they
there.
don't pull.
Here, you know what, take.
Watch out, that's booby trap.
No,
One in
no.
the back, there's a single
There he
one in the
goes.
back.
Sure.
Good to see you.
That's fine, no. Sure. Paul certainly has a lot more experience in law enforcement than I do, although I did police work in Connecticut before I moved up here for 2 or 3 years. But as far as being on the constable, I've been in now about 5 years, I believe, 4 or 5 years as far as constable is concerned. When I first came on, my understanding of what our responsibility was to adjunct the dog warden. We could also give out, we were called in oftentimes for burn violations. We could give out tickets for that. We had the responsibility of picking, we could be called out if the state police couldn't get there for deer hitting a road, and we had permits to hand those carcasses out to said people if they requested the deer. And so for the first few years of being constable here, and we were called out quite a bit for, people with dogs that were hit, things like that in the road. So we had a lot of responsibilities from that perspective. I think it was a year ago in July, the state passed a law that said that unless your constables are part-time trained, then these types of, the other thing is we did get ticket books and we could issue moving violations on people on the roads if we were giving light permits for our vehicles. I didn't have one for mine, but I knew Dave Hertzfeld had lights on his vehicle. And so if we saw moving violations, we could pull people over for that also. But because with the new law passing and we weren't part-time certified, that they stripped all constables of that ability to do that.
The moving violations.
Yes, and anything that had to do with, true law enforcement.
Motor vehicles.
Right. Things like that.
Right.
And so, and then,
But the other stuff you mentioned, helping with burn permits
well,
and
there's
the dog
a
permits,
debate on that now too.
that you can't,
Well, there was a debate a year or so ago on that we didn't have the authorization, the way I understood that. It had to come from the fire warden, that we couldn't give out permits any longer to do that. And so that was one of the things that was also kind of taken away from us. So we could do the dogs dead in the road, the deer, I still have tags for carcasses on deer and stuff like that. But because we didn't go through the training, the other stuff that was more police-oriented, law enforcement kind of traditional stuff went away.
So,
The dog warden thing also had kind of changed. As Karen said, we were responsible in the spring for making the calls for people that didn't register or license their dogs. When the list came out, we would call the names of the people, and then there was a bit of an ordeal with that. I know that didn't set well with Dave when he was here, and because he was saying, and I guess I understand it. I wasn't as hard-nosed as he was about it, but I understood that, the dog warden, Tracy Mulligan, was getting paid $5,000 or $6,000 a year, and we were doing a job, so it didn't jive. And so that responsibility last year was turned over to her, so we no longer do the call. So it seemed like over the last 2 or 3 years that we've been stripped of our ability to do things, other than, and I can't tell you the last time I've been out on a call for whatever reason.
so before the law was written, that prohibited the other things, that they took away your traffic ticket book for moving violations, you were able to give moving violations to cars. How did you work with the sheriff's office at that time?
Well, there wasn't a working relationship that I knew at the time when I came on. Chad, how long have you been on now?
2009.
Okay. We really didn't have that type of working relationship. When I had an issue that I always called the state police. And I think that's what Dave did too. And I didn't know Chad, I really didn't know Gary Forrest, his predecessor. And so it was kind of more like, just because we didn't have that kind of relationship, not that I had any issues calling the sheriffs versus anyone else, but I always had that relationship with the state police, and I knew Rich Treya very well, and so it was, and I knew a lot of the guys that were on the department very well, and so it was just kind of a natural thing for me to just call the state police instead of, the sheriff's department. So that's kind of the way it worked for us, but.
Paul, do you have a sense of what the actual powers, if you will, of the constables are at this point in terms of statute? Because I didn't realize that, some of the things that you're saying, your impression is that you can't do right now, and with the exception of moving violations, motor vehicle violations, but some of the other things would surprise me that you can't enforce burn barrel, town ordinances, in other words. That surprises me.
It more so was for burn permits, not so much ordinances of somebody's burning illegally, we can go down and do that, but we were also able to give out burn permits to, for.
Okay, I didn't
And that
realize,
was
you-
kind
I
of
always thought of
taken
that
out
as
of
the
our
fire
bylaws,
company,
yeah.
yeah.
And Chad, if he goes down and tells somebody they're burning without a permit, does that conflict with what you see as your
No.
job?
And what about something like going with the animal control officer to impound a dog? I know that that's an issue for animal control, because, you can walk into a situation that could frankly become somewhat tense when you're going to take someone's dog. And I wonder, is that something that our constables feel, that you feel is within your duty to do?
For me, yes, because I'm a full-time certified police officer here in the state of Vermont. I held all the authority given to the sheriff and his deputies. The change of a couple of years ago, so I can just back this up, the statute that says that a constable, if given authority by the townspeople, his responsibility is within the town. So to answer that question is that Bob could have that authority once he completes his 40 hours of training. He would have all the authority that a full-time police officer has. He would have his motor vehicle capability, the radar, the training for the criminal code. He'd be able to make the arrests and enforce town ordinances.
But,
There's a difference. We have civil ordinances, and then we have ordinances where enforcement becomes a criminal matter.
I understand that. He would have that authority.
So he would have civil, you can enforce, as I understand it, and this is maybe where we still need clarification, civil ordinances.
right,
That's my sense.
Okay.
Because I'm again reading from the Municipal Law Center up at the League. Select boards may also direct their constables to enforce criminal ordinances if their constables have law enforcement authority.
Yes.
And that was not the language of the prior sentence, which says they may direct constables to enforce civil ordinances. So,
But to have the criminal, if I can reiterate, to have that criminal authority, he has to have that 40 hours of
Yes.
training mandated
or
by the
58
state.
or whatever it is.
58,
58 hours.
58.
He would
plus
need
the
that.
additional 110.
And then the additional 110 to be full-time certified.
right,
Right.
right.
Well, part-time. certified.
But in order to do some of the traditional, be involved in the traditional activities, really, of constables, their primary past responsibilities, let's say, that law enforcement certification would not be required. Is that what I'm gathering?
My understanding is that he would have to complete the 40 hours of part-time training in order to have arrest powers in the state of Vermont as a part-timer.
You're
Okay,
talking different.
but you're talking arrest powers. I'm talking, going to impound a dog or serve papers or,
VSA 1936A.
say,
Right.
you've got a violation here. Would he need training, hours of training for that?
No.
He's not going to arrest anybody.
I think if he's going to issue someone a traffic citation or a citation or a civil citation for a town ordinance violation,
That's what I'm trying to get at.
that
Yeah.
the 40 hours, I think, would be something that you'd want him to have. Because he goes to a situation as a civil case, and you never know you're going to get into what you're going to get for a criminal case.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want him, or anyone for that matter, to be restricted because of he can do
Okay.
civil. I'll give you an example. I go to somebody's house to recover their dog who hasn't paid their fees.
Right.
There's a fight.
Right.
That happens. Parking tickets will get you in trouble.
Yeah.
What authority is he going to have if he's only restricted to a civil
That's right.
side of things? So to have him as a constable and work within and along with the police and the sheriff's department, you would want him to have that 40 hours of training.
I'm here, is it 40 or 58?
Well,
It's 58.
is it 58? Is it-
Yes,
The week-long school is 58 hours.
58
Okay.
hours, that's what it says.
And then there's an additional, the phase 3 is 110 hours, and then they have to ride along for 80 hours of field training.
Okay, so we're talking, I mean, it isn't just the 58.
No, that's
In
to
order
get
to-
you, that's to get you
that's right.
provisionally certified out the
Right.
door. That's that 1-year period.
And then you have to continue with, right.
It's his mandate that you have to have the 110 hours within that next year?
Yes, it has to be completed within that year. You can do it sooner, but typically when you get the prescription of classes that you need, they're offered over the course of a year, so it's harder to cut down that time frame.
Are those
It's not
Are
impossible.
the times broken up yet, or is it?
Yeah, usually it's,
110 straight?
it's usually, next week they're going to do a 32-hour DUI class.
Okay.
And then the week after that, there's the
Okay.
VIN verification and fingerprinting, and then it's,
So it's kind of like continuing education
is.
courses. Once you get the basis, you can focus on what you want.
Except that law enforcement power is not in you don't
Ability.
actually own it until you completed all of the training.
As long as he's with someone who's a full-time certified officer,
That's
he
right.
can do that.
That's
And
right.
that is one of the things that
Direct
we
supervision.
have done over the years with this type of training, is that there is Chad knows more about it than I do, I'm not an FTO, but in the past, and as we do, I work with people, I train them, and I turn them over to an FTO.
Right.
So it's just
FTO,
field training officer. So I may be my background at one point in time was criminal investigation. So if there's a burglary, I'm the guy that takes the young one with me and I show him how to process a crime scene, document, photograph. And then he'll go through that phase with his FTO. So it's not, he could ride with me or he could ride, as long as he's with a certified police officer, he can function as a certified police officer. While he's a provisional, he can't be out on his own.
Yeah, right, that's the direct supervision piece.
So we could, I mean, we could have a system where if the constables, again, are appointed, then we would have the ability to determine what their duties would be. And I'm just thinking, if we had a situation like that, I mean, probably my preference would be, that we try to limit that to what has been historically the services of a constable, but with the knowledge that they may get into trouble, that there may be a problem, and in which case they would have the tools that they need, he or she, if they find themselves in a situation where they need to call upon those law enforcement powers.
I guess I come from the bent, as I kind of suggested earlier, that with what has been happening in and around Bennington, Shaftsbury, the other towns, of burglaries especially, that my thought, for purposes of trying to get the best of all worlds, and there being absolutely nothing that I've ever heard other than excellent reports regarding the sheriff's office, but that we could use more visibility, that if we had a constable that was performing basically the civil function, even if you will, and I don't mean this in a derogatory manner at all, but as a glorified security person who is driving the roads when the sheriff's people are not, because we're not going to be having that many hours, so that there's more visibility to the public of the town to see that there's someone around. Not that that person would then stop because they saw something screwy going on and insert themselves in an area where they are not yet permitted, but at least to then call upon the sheriff's department or state police, whoever we have our arrangements with, so that, if you will, we can pinpoint the usefulness of the contracts that we have in place. And that visibility is what is most important to me as I'm sitting here right now, as opposed to the true criminal investigation activities, aftermath, because hopefully there won't be too many of those. It's visibility that the town wants.
But where the businessman comes out in me is, what you're gonna pay to put these two in a car, to mark that car, you're gonna give them a uniform, you're gonna pay for their dry cleaning, you're gonna pay for the gas in their car. If you just give me those ancillary costs, I could probably double the amount of time that they would be out in a car. So now you got the visibility on top of the person that can do everything that you need them to do when they figure out there's something gone awry. So that's the issue that I take with all this.
But I actually didn't hear Carl say practicing law enforcement.
No, it wouldn't be practicing law
You're still gonna have to
enforcement.
put them in a car.
But Chad is
Well,
making
they
the
would
point,
have-
he's making a financial
All they would be doing is
argument.
utilizing their
It's-
personal vehicle.
Right. So what you gain,
And-
you're gonna lose, where if you just pay me the $25.50 an hour, you're gonna get a lot more for your money.
And if I could interject, as a town resident and as a taxpayer, I understand where Chad's coming from, but I live here. And living here is something a little different than having somebody who's not familiar with the town, who doesn't know where I live or where you live, and has the businessman showing a result for your final dollar. What I'm coming to the board is saying that I think the community, if we look at history, and history says that the community should be taking care of itself, and it should have the means to do that. And the way to do that is to get the community involved. There's a term that goes back years and years ago, it's called community policing. And to do that and be effective, you have to know the people, you have to know their wants and their needs. And I think by having two local people who live in town, who know the area, know where people live, are more effective. Yes, it's going to cost you a little bit more money, but what is the end result? If public safety is important to the community as it is to me, we're only talking, as you heard the lieutenant the last time we met, he used the term peanuts. So that's where I'm coming with this. I mean, it's not just the businessman aspect, but as a trained police officer and who's worked in municipalities for over 30 years, to say to you, this is something that the town should look at and look at seriously. So it's just not a contract, it's a commitment for the people that are sitting on this side of the table to you people and to the community.
Paul, would you, I think one of the things that the board has certainly, all of us have felt, is that the services that we've received from the Sheriff's Department have been exemplary. I mean, I don't think there has been a time, even when we had the break-ins, we were able to, and we did overspend the budget at that point in time initially, because we felt it was happening over the holiday season, and we really wanted to beef up the patrols in town because, people have a lot of gifts in their home, and,
Yes.
And I think that's what I'm struggling with, is that the services that we've gotten, and I think, we had, although I think he might be with the Manchester Police now, one of the sheriffs, who I know patrolled, was a neighbor of mine. So I do think, and Chad, I know you made that point earlier, that there are a lot of local folks, I think, on the Bennington Sheriff's Department. And I'm struggling with how much is enough in terms of budgeting for this position. I do think we have a lot of unknowns in terms of, if we're looking at 2 constables and outfitting them, and I think that, if we don't have sheriff services, we do need cars. Because we talk about, Carl talks about visibility, nobody's going to know, unless our constables are in a car that says Shaftsbury Constable, and they have a uniform, and you furnish a gun and all of the other stuff that goes along with it. I do think that can get pretty expensive. I love the idea of the local personalities involved, but I think we need to approach this really thoughtfully and do what we believe is providing, the best service we can at, frankly, the best dollar. I think that's really important to this community. Tim?
I have not heard anything that discourages me from the idea that if we want more policing in this town, we hire the sheriff more. We love the service that we've gotten from him. I think when I first saw the numbers of $25 an hour, frankly, I thought that sounded like a bargain. I'm a little nervous with the idea of going into the police business. And if we turn the constables into policemen, it seems like we're, as a town, going into the police business. And we're going to have to dispatch and deal with people getting arrested and people going to court and evidence and all of that. And it just seems, and I'm asking for, input.
That would be
What I see
everything.
is, it's just clean and simple and good service to say, we're going into, the same season we were last year when we got a rash of robberies. Let's beef up support. Let's budget more sheriff. And Paul and I are friends. Our kids go to school together. I understand where he's coming from, but I also feel like Bennington's not that far away. And when I think of my community, I include Bennington. And I don't think, with the dog ordinance, I think, the barking dog problem, I think Paul going into somebody's yard and they know Paul versus Chad's deputy that doesn't know him, that might make a difference. But if we're talking about the criminal element, I don't think that the sheriff answering a criminal complaint has much of a downside relative to a constable who lives inside the boundaries of Shaftsbury answering that complaint.
If I could answer that, and I don't know what Chad's, the sheriff's statistics are in the town. I don't know what those are. So, but I have, as a resident, called, and I have not gotten a response from state police, nor did I get a response from the constables. Now, it may not have been the biggest thing that was a law-breaking event, but having a constable here can answer that. A barking dog to us may not be the end of the world, but when you have somebody there who's at their wit's end because his dog has been barking for the last 5 hours because you can't get anybody, it causes great grief to that one individual. I think the constable idea as a resident is a good idea. It's frugal. It's not a lot of money. It's not something that the uniform is not expensive. I want it neat, I want it professional looking, and I want it to speak for the town. I want something as a resident to say, this is the town of Shaftsbury people that we're calling to come to you and respond to these problems. But I can't give you any statistics to tell you how successful we are because I guess we don't have any statistics. And so the idea of having two people who have the ability to piggyback, if you will, the state or the sheriff's department is a good idea. It's a solid idea. And eventually you are going to have to get into the business of police, eventually. I was saying to Bob earlier, I started back in 1979, and what we have as problems today is I was a young man sitting in the hallway listening to an old guy like me trying to explain how positive it is for the community. We don't have anybody into the schools. I drop my daughter off in the morning, there isn't anybody there unless there's a trooper dropping his child off. The crossing issue. We have a gentleman who's out there. Our speed limit sign is still 35 miles an hour, and I believe it's 25 now. And those are the things. So it's when I use the term community policing, it's a lot more than running radar. It's getting the community involved. That's the idea. That's that mindset of getting that community involved with you.
And one of my understandings too is, I'm sorry, Mark, I didn't mean to cut on, but we as a town happen to not have and have not had historically a very active constable position going here, but there are very, very many towns in the state of Vermont that do. As a matter of fact, I got pulled over in Pulteney this summer as I was going up to my boat because the guy thought I was drunk, and he pulled me over one evening, and I was avoiding potholes out the town, and he pulled up and he got out and he came up alongside of me. And he said, is everything all right? And I said, yeah, what's the problem? He said, well, you were swerving pretty good. I said, well, you got to get your town to fill the potholes. And so, he took my license, registration, and he was a full-time, constable with a uniform and a police car and everything. So, and it's not the only town. There are very, very, very many towns in the state of Vermont that have active. Wallingford has one. I know that Pownell did, but is Pownell now?
We were talking about that earlier. They do have a,
They do have a full-time guy and so there are a lot of towns that are finding it to be very effective for whatever reason. And maybe we ought to start looking in and talking to some of the other, the town offices, you people, and select boards of the other towns and saying, hey, this is successful for you.
I think one of the problems here in Shaftsbury with the constables is having the state police barracks here, and Bennington County Sheriff is right down the road. Now, some of the other places that do have constables, I know, they're very necessary. I mean, they do serve a function, and as they do here, because as we heard from Reggie Lieutenant last week or 2 weeks ago, he's got two people on duty for 12 towns. So it's kind of a false security,
It is.
having the state police in town and even the sheriff close by. And it's nice sometimes when,
I too was one of those people, as he said, that called in at 2 o'clock in the morning, probably 5 years ago, I can't remember exactly when it happened, for somebody that was snooping on my property. The dogs barked, I saw these people in the moonlight, and I called the state police, and they said, well, we don't have anybody on. I said, well, there's people snooping around. Well, one thing led to another, and I said, well, I'm gonna have to do something about it if you don't, because there's somebody on my property. Well, it turned out to be the guys that knocked off Pollins. And they ran out of gas on Buck Hill, and they were looking for gas at my garage. And they were caught later on, but, that was what happened, and I didn't get anybody to respond to that call. And I felt a little bit threatened because I didn't know who these guys were. There were 2 people. I grabbed my rifle, just in case. I didn't know what was gonna happen. I certainly wasn't gonna reach out and shoot anybody, but, I was there to protect my family, and things that happened, and I wasn't just I couldn't believe that I couldn't get somebody to come to my house when I had intruders at my house.
now,
Is-
go ahead. For times, I mean, right now, we contract 20 hours a week with the sheriff. Between the two of you, 10 hours apiece or 15 hours apiece, or, I mean, if it were to go something like that, could we, obviously you're retired.
Well, I work a little bit still, but my schedule is my own now, so I don't have people,
I mean, it's,
demands on
could do random, I'm just
Sure.
get gathering facts, random patrols, at least 10 hours each of you, not overlapping. Okay, that's all, pretty much, I'm just asking the question.
Paul and I had discussed this, and this is, earlier on a call when we got together, and, we kind of had the same thoughts. He was talking, because apparently he spoke to somebody here on the board regarding the amount of time and hours, and, I spoke with Mitch, and over the phone about that, and you were talking and relaying to me about the time and the hours.
Yeah, just trying to get a feel for comparable hours, because as it stands right now, if we do go with the constable with policing authority, we will not have any sheriff coverage. So, I mean, it's either sheriff or constables. I mean, that's the way it's laid out to us right now.
and where do dispatch services come from?
Well,
As we get into this, it's one of those things that, and Chad, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the evening, does Bennington dispatch for you, or is it state police?
Not anymore, the Wyndham County Sheriff's Office.
So Wyndham County.
I pay for services for them.
we'd have to count.
That's something that we'd have to look into. I know there is the possibility of different communities being able to dispatch for us, and that there might be a fee, I don't know what it is, but we're talking 15 hours. You'd have to designate at least a phone line, so people would have a number other than a non-911. 911 would be an emergency that would go to the state. It would be dispatched through the state. But we would have to have, if the constables were to meet that responsibility, there would have to be a number that they could get a hold of us. It wouldn't be our home phones, it would be one of these that have to go through a dispatch to sit back and say, you have a call, and if it's something that we can call and say, is it something that we can handle now, or is it something like we can handle tomorrow? My neighbor has an unlicensed dog. Well, 3 o'clock in the morning, I don't think we have to go out for an unlicensed dog. I think we can safely be out there tomorrow morning. So that's one of those areas. I don't have an answer for you, but I'd have to go out and look at that and come back to you and say, this is what it would cost to have communication services and who we go with. That's where we have to
Chad,
go.
can I ask you a question, just to confirm something? One of the things that you said that resonated very much with me was when you talked about, having somebody dealing with an issue at 6 in the morning.
Carl, just move your mic so the audience can hear you.
When I said, the thing that resonated with me was that you said if something has to be addressed at 6 in the morning and then something has to be addressed at 12 at night, you're not having two people, or rather, one person who's going to be responding to both of those, because obviously you've got a team of people. I just want to confirm my understanding is correct. Your team of deputies are people that run shifts 24/7, 365.
No, we currently typically only go out to maybe 2 or 3 in the morning currently. But if we know of specific issues that the town is having, we rededicate our patrol time to satisfy those needs. So my example I gave was one week we had an issue on Cleveland Ave where somebody wanted us to sit in their driveway it was either 5:30 or 6 in the morning. We changed the schedule, got somebody there. The next following week, there were issues up in Howard Park. I can't remember what specifically they were, but those were happening midnight and beyond. So we changed our schedule and we were there for the rest of that week during those bracketed time periods. The context in which I brought that up was when, because you talked about having that local feel and the single person doing all of the law enforcement needs, you run into problems when you have a 24-hour period to cover and only one person to do it, because they're not going to be wanting to go out at 5 in the morning and then answering the 2 in the afternoon complaint and then the 2 o'clock in the morning complaint. So by having a pool of people to handle that, you're able to cover more of an area without getting people that are going to be burnt out and not wanting to do that. And if I can kind of make like a closing statement and a final argument here, and nothing against either of these two gentlemen. I respect where they work, their knowledge, their training. But you got to look at this as, I'm the guy here losing between $5 and $6 an hour to provide law enforcement coverage. These two sitting here stand to gain because I'm sure the town is going to pay them to do the services. So you got to kind of take our comments in that kind of context. With all due respect, and I'm not trying to be negative, but the businessman in me comes out. I think our deputies now do community-oriented policing. They may not be local Shaftsbury residents, but all of the communities in this town are under my authority. I'm the county sheriff. The people of all these towns elect me. It doesn't get any more local than me. I am your law enforcement voice. I'm your elected law enforcement voice. If you folks don't appreciate what we do, 2 things happen. You end my contract and you don't vote for me next time. So my agency is very much about community service. So if a board or a resident tells me that things aren't being handled, I adjust my resources and we take care of it, because we don't want those negative contacts. And we don't want the negativity in the communities. So I think over the years, we have a very good track record of being responsive. And I don't think anybody here on the board can come up with a single instance where there's been anything negative. And I think that's kudos to my people. Not necessarily my leadership, but the people that are here in the community doing the work for you. So if you're going to allocate more resources, given the fact that I'm already losing $4 and $5 an hour, I just kind of feel it's not owed to me, but I think I want to be given the opportunity at the very least to, if you hand me more resources, let's see what we can do with it. Let's see if some of these other issues that these two bring up are alleviated.
Bob made the comment about he tried to call the state police at 2 o'clock in the morning, didn't get no answer.
Well, I got a dispatcher.
Well, you got a dispatch, but they didn't have anybody to send.
Yeah.
Do you, as a role, have anybody to send, or would it have to be a special?
Typically not after 2 in the morning. Most agencies, other than Bennington Police Department, is 24/7, and Manchester Police, I don't, and you could answer that better. I know they have dispatch, but I think even their officers go off
We're on call after 3.
after 3.
Yeah.
But not to say that, if the town of Shaftsbury wanted to pay somebody to be on call from my department to come and handle calls, that's not out of the question.
Well, you have had situations, though, where you would have officers on duty at that time of day, given a certain
Absolutely. If you tell me.
certain
that-
things happening at a certain time, say.
Absolutely, absolutely. We can adjust the schedule accordingly, and we do that frequently. But we also want to give you the most visibility for your, you got 20 hours, and you got to spread that across so that the people in Shaftsbury Hollow see us, and then the people up on Buck Hill and
You don't
Chapel
get, you
Road.
don't get an officer out there and never find him again? Or?
Well, it's not that, but, if we're out on the streets at 2 or 3 in the morning,
Yeah.
people are going to say, we never see the sheriffs.
Yeah, no.
So, we have to, when you only have 20 hours in a 7-day week,
Right.
you have to be smart about when you're
No,
going
I
to
understand.
prioritize.
Yeah.
But yes, if the town told me, we want you to patrol from 3 in the morning until 5 a.m.,
Like when they were having the break-ins, that, right.
that's absolutely something that we can do. Just, you got to give me notice, and I got to put
Right.
somebody in that spot.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. But I have 32 cars, I have 5 or 6 deputies that all they do is full-time patrol. We have a good number of part-time folks, so we have the resources that we can give you.
Are you on call during those off hours?
I'm always on call.
So, he said he called the state police and they said that everybody's busy, I can't do anything. Could he have called sheriff dispatch and gotten somebody to come out?
If you call my dispatch after hours, it's going to go to Wyndham County, and they can contact a duty officer. If I don't have anybody out on the road, that's something that the town would have to tell me, yep, if you get a call after 2 in the morning, I'm going to have to pay somebody a 4-hour call out, and the town is going to incur that cost, or we're going to take it out of the 20 hours of patrol. That's certainly something that we can do. Towns are pretty reluctant to do that because, who then decides, well, it's a barking dog complaint, so we're going to wait till 6 in the morning.
right.
But it's, something that sounds more serious, so we're going to go. It's just hard to, it's hard for a town board to sit down and say, yeah, we want you to go to these calls, but not these calls, and we'll pay for this, we won't pay for that. So that's where the difficulty comes in. But even your constables are going to have to make that snapshot judgment of, is this something I'm going to get out of bed at 3 in the morning for?
Right. So if I call 911, first off, if I call 911, who am I calling?
If you
State
call
police?
911, it goes to state police dispatch. And typically after 2 in the morning, the officers are on call. So the trooper, wherever he or she lives, has to get out of bed, get dressed, and respond. They're paid to be on call. So if you dial 911, somebody is going to come. It's just going to take them some time. It's not going to be like Bennington Police, who's 24/7, who have people actively patrolling. But that's, every community in Vermont, in most cases, with the exception of a couple of barracks, the troopers go off duty at certain times and don't come on again until 6 or 7 in the morning.
Okay.
But not to say that my office can't cover that. It's just, again, it's going to take resources. It's going to take money. We're going to have to sit down and figure out, if that's worth it to the town.
I'm looking at the time, and I really appreciate the fact that you 3 have all been very patient with our questions, and again, I think this board needs to decide fairly immediately, whether we're going to put a question to the voters in terms of an appointment versus the continued 1-year election. And we also have some budgetary issues to figure out. I think that if we were to put that on the ballot, it doesn't mean that we are going to full law enforcement abilities for our constables. We're not, that wouldn't be.
Why else would we do it, though?
Because then it would provide us the opportunity to do that. We're still in a budget season, so if the select board determined that they wanted to expand the duties and take a look at training to begin that process, then we could build that into the budget and do that. One of the issues with training monies and all of that is that it's been an elected position. Or the board can just decide to keep it just the way it is. But again, I think there are a lot of budgetary impacts to this, and I personally don't know enough of the impact to the budget if we have 2 constables that are sharing essentially 15 hours a week or 20 hours a week, 10 each person, I don't know. But it would seem to me that there are, some given costs in that. I don't know cumulatively what that all adds up to. I don't know what an hourly rate would be for our constables. And, you know, that all really, that's important information, I think, for this board to know before we authorize any kind of law enforcement kinds of activities.
Karen, we could certainly, Paul and I could come up with, to give you an idea of what the cost would be. You know, looking into, you know, a used vehicle, and I know, as we said, clothing-wise, get a pair of, you know, BDU pants and a shirt made up. It's, you know, I dare say it wouldn't even be $50 a person, to be quite honest with you.
Well, and whatever those costs are, I mean, we have to understand that these folks then are coming under Margie's supervision.
Yeah.
You know, so that's an additional level of responsibility for our town administrator that we're putting on her. And it's a very big responsibility. I think, you know, once we take on law enforcement in Shaftsbury, that's a very big deal.
All I'm saying is, we can give you, if you're looking for
I
a
think that, for me, that would be very
prospectus
helpful.
on what it's gonna cost, we can
Yeah.
certainly do that. I think
Yeah.
you know
I think we need
what
that.
Chad's costs are, because it's per, you know, per hour, per person, times how many hours you want them in town, it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
But,
I think that would probably be helpful.
It would be very
to
helpful.
forward.
yeah.
I've got a
To
Gall's
make
catalog
decisions
downstairs,
going
but I wouldn't
forward.
know where to start.
And again, I think, you know, no matter what direction we take, we are, none of this is gonna happen by November 30th with constables. So we, again, have a situation where we, I believe, need to have a discussion with the sheriff's department on extending a contract. So I would suggest, you know, if we, when we have our next meeting, which would be October 21st, that we have this again on the agenda, and whether you two guys can get together some figures for us. And Chad, we know what your figures are already. Does that make sense to the board? Sure.
Yes, absolutely.
And I can definitely make myself available to sit down, so we go over a checklist of what you think would have to be in that budget, and, you know, we turn you loose with, on the websites or whatever, or catalogs, whatever you know.
That's for policing authority. I mean, we were still talking about whether we're going from an elected to an appointment, which is like the number one position.
That's right, but what I'm hearing all of these questions
We're also talking
about law
about civil versus
enforcement, and-
criminal.
So I think we need to have the whole picture in front of us, you know?
Well, you can't get that on the December vote legally now, can you? To change the constables from
Yeah, we could.
elected to appoint?
Yeah, we could.
You could?
Yeah, there's time.
Here's
We
time.
could.
It'll-
Do it in
the
December or
one-
March.
Right. I mean, the one concern I have is timing and getting enough information out to the.
Well, yes, but
Yeah, no, and.
The way
and-
things are, I
you know
thought it
what?
just took longer than that.
There's a March election.
Yeah.
So,
right.
you know, it doesn't mean that that wouldn't also be an opportune time to have that on.
All
the-
right, but I just
I know,
didn't think there was.
like I said, I know this constable in Wells, Vermont. I have not specifically talked to him about how many hours he patrols and does his duty, but he works his own business all day long, and then he's a constable on and around, and I might have been the one that pulled you over for all I know.
Now, this guy was out of Pulteney, I don't think it's the same, but the same vicinity anyway, and they're, you know, two small
Yeah,
towns that have.
but I know, I don't know where he got his car. It's a used patrol car. But his line item in the budget for his set wages is $6,000. So I imagine
which
it's
town,
probably
Wells.
Wells,
Wells?
Vermont, yeah.
So, in any case, there's some information we need to ferret out, I think, and really proceed down that road. Okay?
Yep.
So we'll be back on the budget on the agenda for the 21st. And we'll let you all know the time and all of that good stuff. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
all of
Joe.
Thanks for coming.
you. Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
Thanks, Chad.
All right, on my agenda. Thank you, Mitch, for all your work on that
It's a lot of work.
issue. It is a lot of work, and it's a, you know, it's a tough issue. I mean, it's a very big, there are very big changes, and it's kind of been forced on us, so. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the request for approval of grand list errors and omissions. We have 3. Tim, and Ken for, I think we have, I don't know that we've done this, Ken, since you've been on the board. Maybe we have.
What do you want to start with?
Pardon?
Which one do you want to start with?
Well, why don't we start with Martis? I was just going to give a little background. We have, each year, the listers bring to us changes that they're requesting based on the grand list errors and omissions. These are errors and omissions that have come to their attention after the grand list has been logged up with the state. And so we have 3 before us tonight. The first one is a Jennifer Martis, property ID 1101352. Now the situation with this is that the BCA, there had been an appeal on the property valuation. The BCA in 2012 had reduced the assessment, and in fact her 2012 tax bill was correct, but somehow it didn't get picked up in the 2013 figures, so it reverted back to the old grand list number. So they're just asking that grand list amount be adjusted to what had been the previous adjustment of $611,900. There is a tax impact of $3,988.48 based on the tax bill that had gone out to her, but
So that's what we're going to lose?
not really, because it's based on the grand list. We already lost it last year. In other words, in 2012, her tax bill went out. That was when we lost that. So I don't quite understand.
True.
I guess the tax impact is based on the tax bill they sent out to her. But they're just,
It's a clerical error.
pardon?
It appears to have been a clerical error.
Yes, yes. Somehow it didn't carry forward.
It's not, we're
The
not
real
gonna
estate
lose
taxes.
$4,000.
Well,
We're
that's
not
what I'm trying to
We're trying to
think.
keep from collecting $4,000 we don't deserve, right?
Well, her
Yeah,
2012 real estate taxes were based upon the revised value. And then basically what happened is that this year, her taxes went back up by $3,900 and,
And the municipal rate barely
Whatever.
changed. But I don't know if they're resident or
Right.
non-resident.
no, they're resident.
Okay.
But again, you know, what they're asking us to do is approve the new grand list value of $611,900. So I would ask for a motion and a second, and if there is more
I move that
discussion.
we approve the reinstatement of the property's revised value of $611,900 to the 2013 grand list.
Second.
And that was for parcel ID 1101352. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The second one is Carl and Leslie Smith. This is parcel ID 162266. Now, this is an individual who has a veteran's exemption, and as some of you may know, in Shaftsbury, we have agreed as a town to give veterans that have over 50% disability a $40,000 exemption on their property valuation. So he had not had the benefit of that. They were not aware of it when the tax bill went out. So essentially, they're bringing the grand list value down from $200,400 to $160,400. The tax impact would be $131.20. So I would ask for a motion. Reduction, yes.
I move that we we include the $40,000 exemption to the 2013 grand list for the aforementioned property.
So bringing the grand list value down to $160,400.
Correct.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And the last one is Joseph and Amy Myers. And apparently there was an error on the grand list. The lister's card had this property showing 1.48 acres. The land area in the deed and the tax map both indicate 1 acre. So the listers have agreed that there was an error there. And the request is to bring the current grand list of $153,000 down to $148,200, which would have there'd be a reduction in tax revenue of $15.74. So I would ask for a motion for that new grand list value of $148,200.
I move that the deed and the map, I guess what's the grand list, both indicate that the land area is 1 acre, bringing the aforementioned property's value down to $148,200, and a de minimis impact on the taxation, or minimal impact to the towns.
Second.
Get that, John? And that was parcel ID 082023. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Madam Chair, I need you to sign the 3 of these.
Okay.
It's the only signature line I've got.
Okay, now the next order of business is appointment policy. Mitch has once again been working hard as charged by the board to develop an appointment policy for the Planning Commission and the Development Review Board. The Select Board had the first reading on September 16th. This would be our second of 3 readings. Margie, you have to do 3 readings on these policies?
Yes, according to past practice.
I did get some response from, I sent this out to the chair, to the Planning Commission and the Development Review
Just
Board.
pull your mic a little closer.
I don't know if that's working, because this is low.
Okay.
I did send this out to the...
Okay.
I did send this out to the Planning Commission and the Development Review Board, all members. And I did get some responses back. And basically, I got a response back from Chris Williams. He says, basically, it looks fine. It reflects pretty much how the system works now. We've already discussed that. That's pretty much what he said, and that's what he said. I asked him about the constable position also, so.
Was Chris speaking on behalf of the whole commission?
No, Bill Pennebaker also replied.
Okay.
And he said, the only thing I can find is a few wills should be probably shalls. Shall is a mandate to take action, while will means the action is guaranteed to happen.
Okay, well, that's a good observation.
Mercy, the one
And those are the shalls and the wills.
did this get changed substantially from the one that was before? because this is not, there were separate sections I remember you had previously.
Yeah. They're all the same.
Was that?
A, B, C,
No,
D,
Yeah,
E.
that's it. Here.
A, B, C, D, E.
no. I had sent you a number of changes, which you
Oh,
sent
yes, and I
back to me.
incorporated it, yeah, they should be in here.
I remember I had a subsection 1, 2, 3. I'll have to go back and take a look. This
Oh, I
looked very
incorporated it,
different.
I incorporated
Oh,
it,
there?
I think yes, I did incorporate it, I know
I
that.
saw the last one, this one looks very different.
I just changed, I think your 1, 2, 3s might have been different, A, B, Cs or something.
Let me see if I can find. Find what I was, employment policy, Mitch.
And I did get a response from Dave Mance concerning this, and he brought up an interesting thing concerning, concerning the applicants must be a resident of Shaftsbury. He says, and in his, I think the membership should be limited to landowners, not simply residents. We are dealing with laws that affect land, and the owners are the taxpayers. They have the most to lose by overzealous regulations, so representation should come from that class of resident. So instead of like someone renting somewhere, and
Who made that comment?
Pardon?
Who made that comment?
Dave Mance. He also brought up the point that he thinks the membership on multiple boards should be discouraged, which I think it is for the most part. And if we had more people applying, I don't think there would be multiple members on multiple boards,
Right.
or a single member on multiple boards. Basically, even though the statutes allow a selectman to be on the planning commission or the selectman to be on the DRB, it basically is, he stated that there's an inherent conflict with a person serving on a planning commission and the select board. For a person,
Conflict of interest there?
well, inherent conflict. It's basically
Perhaps
since the
perception.
select board has to approve any changes to zoning or subdivision regulations. A person to be able to write a law and then act on a board that adopts the law is wrong. While this is less critical for the DRB, since in theory we are quasi-judicial, I think it reflects poorly on a community that we can't find enough interested citizens to fill seats without having multiple duties.
You hear that, folks out there? There's a call to arms, if I ever heard one.
But what are you gonna do?
That's right.
Can't
They're
make
not
people
there,
serve.
they're not there.
He also commented on the percentage of recusals. And he doesn't feel that the town professionals should know how to separate membership from representation. The person shouldn't be appointed or reappointed.
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
If the town doesn't feel that a professional knows how to separate membership from representation, the person shouldn't be appointed or reappointed. The whole keeping track of how often a person recusing himself or herself is foolish. Now, I tend to disagree with that. I think 35% is a fairly high number of recusals, and I don't think it's a much big of a deal to keep track of that, especially at the DRB meetings. Planning commissions, it'd strictly be absences. You're not hearing, a 20% absence, that's pretty standard on all the appointment policies that I read. 35% recusal, I think, is pretty standard. Otherwise, you have a person in a position that is only filling a position 65% of the time. And that's a C minus or D plus if you want to go that way.
Do we have,
I have-
any situations currently where we have board members that are over 35% recused?
I
You
started
were going to try to.
looking at that, and I have not completed it, but I don't think that's the case, but I have not gone since January to figure it out whether that would be the case or not.
You said that
yeah.
other municipalities,
Change meeting, you had me.
This is what you sent me before. and it looks like the original, one of my comments.
Yeah, you had a lot of the town voting day.
Do you
I got
have a
'em all.
reference on resignation? You have a section on resignation in that one?
No, I don't.
So, because
Is that the one I sent you?
this is one you sent me, and this is the original one that you sent me that I then marked up, so this is what I marked up and you sent back and said was being
Okay, I
forwarded.
think I might have forwarded the wrong
You
one.
forwarded the wrong one, or if you wanted, I mean, or
This
you,
is- yeah, it's
or
the
you're not gonna use any of the suggestions.
There's a, no, I incorporated all your suggestions. I thought they were good. And I didn't even notice that when I
Yeah.
printed
it's-
this up.
it's- I can forward these all to everybody right now, but, yeah,
Is that the one I updated and sent back out? That would be.
Okay, so it sounds as though we have some
that's,
changes.
see, that's why,
Yeah,
one,
yes,
two,
I did put those in there.
and the,
Yeah, and they're not
and
in
the
there.
resignation, because it
Yeah.
only covers if the
Mhm.
notice.
Okay, just for you, we gotta,
It sounds like we have some changes.
Some
that
updates.
We'll make for the next reading. I'm curious as to what the board's thoughts are on Dave's, I think it's a good point that he made in terms of landowners versus residents.
and that's why I brought that up. I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I'm willing to make that change and,
My thought is, well,
ahead.
I'm the new guy, but just the feeling of it has kind of unsavory to me, that the town is for everybody in the town, not just the landowners. And that, it's also the landowners we're regulating, and we're saying only landowners can regulate landowners. I'm not sure that that's an easy thing for me to go along with.
I understand where he's coming from in the fact that someone renting a property here or gets on the board.
Wasn't that the way it used to be with regard to voting in the South? You had to be a landowner in order to vote?
In the United States, you had to be a white landowner originally. Maybe that's where I get the...
Well, it's going back even further.
But how are you going to define land ownership? Does having a mortgage constitute land ownership?
Tax bill.
Carl's the
Tax bill.
lawyer here, but isn't that illegal in a way?
What?
To say that a landowner can sit on a board and a
Non-landowner
and a
can't?
non-landowner can't?
I'm just saying precedentially, it immediately comes to mind, the old rule that, only landowners could vote in any
Okay.
elections. To say you can't hold a public office unless you're a landowner, that would probably be a problem with equal protection.
Yeah. But I mean, even if you're a renter, you're still, in a way, you're still paying taxes.
Well,
'Cause
you're
it's-
voting
it's
here.
tied-
You're a resident.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
the
but
federal
I mean,
government
it's tied to
considers you a
your- to
resident
your
of the
rent.
town. The state considers you a resident of the town.
Right.
If you've declared this as your residency, even if you have a domicile somewhere else, it would,
Yeah, but if you're paying
Better
rent, your
put.
taxes are paid, tied to it.
Well, you could have a young person on the board whose parents own the property.
Yeah.
you have to, a town or a governmental entity has to have a clear reason why it would act in a discriminating way that way.
Right.
Here, what clear reason would we have for treating somebody who rents differently than somebody who owns land?
I don't think you can do
And
it.
if the issue is money, that's not a good enough reason.
No.
Because then you could say, well, if you have a $500,000 house, you can sit on the board. If you don't, you can't. So if that seems to be the distinguishing factor, then I'd say, you're absolutely right, Kenny, you bring up the point. Yeah, you don't need a lawyer to tell you that.
So the model I did have had said resident or landowner. One of the language of one of the things. So I'll just leave it at resident.
Resident.
Okay. that's
You went to
that.
college all them years and didn't even need it.
See, you missed your calling, Kenny.
Or landowner.
You missed your
is a lot
calling.
different. Resident or landowner is a lot different category than just saying landowner.
Well, residents. I think residents.
Why wouldn't you just say resident?
Yeah, I think
What's the
that-
what do you need the word landowner for?
Because you can own land here and it's not your primary residence, right?
Right, I mean, you could have people that own a camp up in the hollow.
I'd rather just have the
or own
residents.
a, vacant piece of property that lives in Bennington.
Okay.
So,
So do we want just residents as it reads now?
I think that would be
You were
my
saying
preference.
other places say resident or landowner?
Residents and landowners,
And landowner.
well,
That's-
no, or.
Or,
Must be a resident, a business owner, or a landowner.
That's what it states right now?
No,
That's
I
what
just say a
somebody just
resident.
read that.
I just say a resident.
Okay.
I figure if you're a landowner here, chances are you're a resident. Well, not necessarily.
I don't see how you can have it any different, Mitch.
that's how we do everything else, right?
So what about the Bill's suggestion of the will changing to
The
shall?
whole application interview process where there's will, I'm going to change that to shall.
Okay. And you'll incorporate,
All this, and I'm sorry I sent out the wrong
I
one.
have quite substantial proposals.
do you
so-
want to forward those to the board too, just for our own
Just
information?
forward it right now.
Sure, I'll forward it right
At the
now.
next reading, we will have already
Let me see
seen
what it's
those.
called so I can save it and send it.
Can't
You
believe
know,
I
the
grabbed
other
the wrong
thing,
one.
I was wondering, is there any reason that we would want there to be a reference to their annual review of their policies and procedures? Or do we just assume that they will do that on their own? We also had the civility resolution that we spent a lot of time on last year.
Well, in section E, it says each PC or DRB chair or designate shall meet with the select board annually for the purpose of reviewing the stated mission statement of the PC and DRB and to grant general overview of work being done by each board.
Right, what I'm saying is, should this document require each one of those
I know, that's
commissions
true.
to, review their own policies or update them?
I think that's up to the individual boards,
And what
which are the
about
rules or
civility
procedures.
resolution? That really was initiated by the select board.
It has nothing to do with the appointment or the reappointment policy of the DRB or the select board.
Okay,
Karen?
that's fine. I just wanted to run through those.
I think that should be brought up every year at first meeting of the town, after town voting day.
Karen, actually, Mitch sent out the copy with my edits dated October 1, and I think
Yeah, this is
what
9:30.
you may have sent to the DRB was simply the mistake.
9:30,
Well,
yeah.
I've got one that I printed off from Mitch, October 4th.
Yeah, that's
what
the wrong one.
That's the wrong one. If you go back, I'll forward it again. I'll just forward again what he has, so there's no
Yeah,
question.
okay. All right.
There was some changes in there. I added a Carl made a good point, and we added subcategories for the member conduct and removal.
Okay.
No, application, resignation, application, and interview process too, so it's,
Did you hear from any other members of the DRB?
I did not hear from anyone,
Okay. And you don't know if they discussed this as a board or not?
I asked the DRB last week if they've got a copy
Oh,
of
you were
it,
there, right, of course.
and they said they had seen it and they had not read it yet.
Okay. So, do we want to put this on again, on
do you
the
want a
October
copy?
21st agenda for a
Yes.
third reading? And the reason I'm suggesting that is if we adopt this, this is a fairly close timeline in terms of, getting the public informed by a certain date.
Actually, part of
We
the
could hold it over to early November.
Part of the change that Carl had stated was we shouldn't be asking anyone whose term is expiring by December 1st whether or not they're going to be running in March or not.
Yeah, I saw.
So that's been removed.
Why, no, the point being, why should they be required to tell us before anybody else in town?
Right.
Yeah, so
Let's
it
treat them
made
differently.
sense to me, so I removed that.
If the term is expiring, we're going to put it out there in the paper
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
Yeah.
So-
That's a good point.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry I sent the incorrect version of it.
Everybody has it. You sent the correct version, you just printed
Printed
out.
I sent out the last one for the,
Everybody has the one that Mitch sent, resent.
Okay, so do you want this on the agenda for the 21st or the first meeting in November, which I don't have a calendar?
Well, I think you
Do we
need
want
to
to do the
do,
21st?
I would suggest you do a
Comfortable?
reading of the full policy with Carl's corrections on the 21st.
Okay.
Okay.
I would-
That'll be like a second reading because.
Second reading of this, yeah.
Because we got the
Yeah.
wrong
We
one.
don't have the
Okay.
right one.
Makes sense.
Okay?
Yep.
Thank you, Mitch, again, for all of your work on that. So now, the next item on the agenda has to do with the special election that we'd been tentatively talking about December 3rd, and this would be for the town garage vote. And Margie had mentioned to me just before the meeting began that she and Judy had taken a look at the timeline and the various notice requirements, and perhaps we would be better to move that to December, to the following week. Am I right, Margie? That might give you a little...
From the elections scheduling perspective, December 10 works better than December 3rd, because December 3rd is just after the Thanksgiving holiday weekend.
That's for the election?
From the election, well, the special vote. It's a special
We would have an
election.
informational meeting on
Same.
that Monday
It's a
after Thanksgiving.
Special.
My
town-
only concern has to do with how that tightens us up then, in terms of
Will the board have to be there?
the RFP and, getting things out for engineering services and, as we try to go to bid at a reasonable time.
A lot of it is guesswork, Karen.
I know.
But when I had originally handed out a projected schedule, it was trying to guess, based on the fact that we're assuming a model floor plan,
Yeah.
that already exists, how much time we would save in the design process.
Right.
And also, how much time we would save if we procure design services. I think there are certain aspects of the procurement process that wouldn't shorten up. You're losing 7 days.
And that worries me, because then we're moving, right into the holiday. Is Judy saying that she just can't do it?
No, she's not
For the
saying she
third?
just cannot do it. It's a lot more difficult to do it as scheduled. Let's go back to look at what it was we were saying based on a December 3rd. Means that your next meeting, let's back up. You need to confirm, if we move ahead with December 3, we need to make sure we know what that ballot item is on the garage. That
We need to know
question,
that by when?
that question needs to be known by next week. How to phrase that question.
So are you saying that would require us to have a special
We have
select
to-
board meeting next week?
We have to review the proposed warning by October 22nd, to the 30th.
Okay, so
21st.
the 21st.
Is your
would
last
potentially
regular meeting.
Be when we could,
You have to sign the bonding resolution, your warning, and the documents. Now, I have to confirm with Jack Facey, but I had written it down for October 28th. October
October
21st. That's 2 weeks from now.
right, that's right.
And the last chance to post would be November 1st. Now, this implies also the town clerk is actually disappears. She goes away Thanksgiving. I don't know what bearing that has on the actual election schedule.
Well, we're all going to, the ballots are already going to be ready before Thanksgiving week. I mean, we have to have those ready a
Yeah.
month ahead of time for absentee ballots, and at least.
No, 20 days in
20 days
advance.
ahead of time, so.
Yeah.
We knew this was going to be tight,
Yeah.
so I hesitate to have to, bring the board in for an additional meeting at the end of October, when we're going to have to start with budget meetings. If there's a way we can pull this together for the 21st. She's rolling her
Oh,
eyes.
oh.
The
to-
language, having
Oh,
the
sure.
language ready
Well,
for the
that's going to
21st.
be, that's going to be the work of the Select Board and the Garage Committee.
Yeah, yeah.
You have, and that may entail, in order to sign a resolution and warning and the documents for the bond, you're going to have to decide the number, what amount you're asking
Right,
for, all of that.
Right.
And you, so it looks like you'd have to have a special meeting between now and the 21st.
At the select board? Or the select board we can have a joint garage committee.
Select Board,
meeting.
exactly.
But we need to know from John Facey what the language, what we can actually say in that language, right? I mean, he needs to
Yes, and I had
get
sent,
some
yeah,
guidance there.
right.
Okay,
He needs to respond to that,
all right,
because you want to take advantage of alternative financing.
right,
And that was the question of how to ask that,
yes.
what impact that would have on the,
I mean, essentially,
Right.
we're asking for we will potentially be asking the community for a flat amount of money. And we don't know that we'll be accessing that through the bond bank. We're asking for the ability to borrow up to that amount of money.
Is there any real problem in trying to word what we want to put on the ballot within a week? Doesn't sound, I mean,
I
it's
don't
not
think
rocket
so.
science.
I don't think so. And, you know,
Can't we basically borrow what the language we used last year and just plug in the right number?
no, because there's, you have that question of alternative financing through local banks. I just need bond counsel to get back to me on what bearing that has on the question, whether we have to ask two separate questions or if it just is one
No, I'm just
question.
saying we can use that one from back when as a template and modify it.
Oh, yeah.
So as I say, I can't imagine,
It's not going to be a
Right,
big
I mean,
adjustment. I just have to get the man.
shall the bonds of the town of Shaftsbury in an amount not to exceed 1,500,000 blah, 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 be issued, it won't be that much, folks. It will be under $1 million. This was last time.
But it's going to be, shall the voters authorize
Yeah,
the
that book is
town
scaring
to
people.
borrow an amount
Right,
not
because,
to exceed X
Yeah,
from either the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank or,
Right.
that's kind of how I see it would go.
Because that one was specifically bonding, and we may be borrowing.
I'm just saying, you know,
Yeah.
it shouldn't take a week to write
Yeah.
2 sentences.
Yeah,
so if we have all the wording by the next meeting on the 21st, then we've met all the
the requirements.
requirements for
Timeline,
warning, timelines and all that good
Starting
stuff.
to get all of that cranked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Margie, you're also worried about pulling an election together 2 days after the town clerk gets back from being on vacation, right?
It will be everybody. However, the closer you get to the holidays, the worse off. I mean, the
Right.
holidays that occur at the end of December, we may, and the middle of December, we may also be in a tough
So we're
spot.
better off if we keep it on the 3rd. The
Yeah,
closer we
because
keep it
you
to
know,
the 3rd.
We have to remember, once we, get that hopefully positive vote, then we have to put an RFP out there for design services. We have to engage somebody to take what we have in that sample building and say, this is what we're looking at.
Site adapted.
And, right, and this is where we want to put it. Is this going to work? And we're going to have to, the select board's going to be having to interview engineering, and we don't want to be doing, I don't want to be in the position of going on December 10th and then everybody's gone for the holidays, and which may very well happen anyway, but,
If we stay with an application to the Vermont Bond Bank, which occurs only one time a year, once by May 15th annually, that, you have to work backwards from that date in order to come up with a number secure enough to go to the bond bank with, in an increment of whatever it was he was saying, 5,000 or so, or, so you can be general within a certain limitation. If Vermont-bound bank financing is not to be sought, then there's no May 15th rush or deadline by which you would have to have your final construction estimates.
So.
So what do you want? Do you
think,
want,
December 3rd or December 10th? What are we looking at? We need.
I would say December 3rd.
what does Maggie want?
I'm thinking, well, I think that in honor of the garage committee and the planning that needs to come and all the work that needs to be done after the election, and the vote, December 3rd gives us a 7 days jump on the other date of the 10th. So it's more advantageous to have it earlier than later.
And the plan of the garage committee was to really go out and, do the informational program, if you will, to the community through the month of November. And I think the sooner we can have a vote after that, the better.
Now, the other part of this is that you also have elections for select board vacancies. Because you have short-term appointments for two of you. And petitions would have to be in by the 6th Monday prior to the election, which I think we would have to be October 28th. And that's very little time to get word out about the fact that we would be holding elections to fill these seats. But another 7 days to get the word out is not going to make a huge difference either. So no matter what, we have our work cut out for us for either a December 3rd or 10th vote.
So if we decide on December 3rd, we really need to get if we decide that this evening, we need to get a news release
Tomorrow.
out to the banner, inviting residents, letting them know what two seats are available. If there's anybody out there that wishes, to run for those positions, that those will be two seats to fill the vacancy through, the period of time in question.
There'll be 2 seats for the appointed select board members.
That's
Correct.
right, that's right, that's right. And, we would need to let them know when the petitions were due and how many signatures they need.
Oh, yeah,
And,
we're meeting tomorrow morning. The chief of elections and
Oh, good,
Me?
okay.
and I.
So we're saying that a petition needs to be in by the 28th
By the
for the
28th.
December 3rd.
The sixth Monday prior to December 3rd, which I think came out to be the 28th. We were just counting that off.
And essentially, as I remember, someone needs 30 signatures on a petition in order to...
October 28th.
So I think we can get the word out this week. Post it.
And then the ballots have to be printed by November 13th.
So I guess I would ask for a motion regarding the town vote for the garage with the election of 2 officers on the ballot. I mean, that's, basically, that's what we're looking for, a December 3rd vote.
I'd make a motion that we have the vote for the garage and 2 seats December 3rd.
Second.
Is there any reason to, Marky, in terms of that motion, do we want to add in any other business that the town...
Is required to come before the town.
Right. I mean,
Because
that's in the event that the board decides they want
Right.
the constable issue on that.
And you may
ballot.
have, you might have a zoning issue.
Right.
Oh, before you, it's a whole nother, right, absolutely. Okay.
Yeah,
so
no, I would, whatever the
whatever
wording's
other
gotta be.
town, okay. All right, is there any other discussion? All those in favor for December 3rd vote? Sorry, Judy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? We're all set. Okay. All right. Thanks, Marky. Okay, we annually have to discuss, and I think we've taken a vote. Have we taken a vote to
You have.
close Cleveland Avenue for Halloween?
From what hours to what hours?
I think it's from,
I'm thinking we do 5 to 8, but you know, it's dark enough by 4:30 that
I would agree.
we have trick-or-treaters out at 4:30.
4:30
4:30.
4:30.
until 8?
Guess a lot of people go straight from the Bennington
I was going to say
Parade
maybe 8:30.
Don't encourage any more. I get 300 a year as it is.
Well, you're keeping residents from,
Driving in and out, okay. I move that
little
we,
kiddies are gone
that
at
we
8, they're in
close
trouble.
Cleveland Avenue on October 31st from the hours of 4:30 PM until 8 PM as a matter of safety for trick-or-treaters in Shaftsbury.
Second.
Now, did we ever have to, was Church Street part of this? Because of
no.
the loop? It was only
Well, I was on the
Cleveland.
board.
It was only Cleveland.
Only Cleveland, yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna make a
Don't
mess
rock
if
the
you
boat.
close that
I
street.
just had forgotten.
A real problem.
I suddenly had a brain seizure tonight about that.
So we should inform the, is there any discussion?
The only thing is that, didn't we have, I don't know if it needed to be part of the motion, but the fire department
I was just gonna
volunteers
suggest to
always
The fire police.
monitored it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's, we need to let them know.
Yep,
so
I will.
So do we need to have that as part of the motion, or is that okay?
I think that's a given. Part of the procedure. Any other comments?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. Okay. Now, we have the Vermont Health Exchange, insurance plans. And I know that Margie has been reviewing these. Here's mine. These have
I have to tell you, I have, since the league did its presentation to you, I have not had the time to go into in-depth analysis about. But I did send along all of the spreadsheet analyses that they had provided us.
Yep.
That night, again, in case you had lost copies.
What are we expected to do tonight with regard to this?
You know, I think one of the things we want to talk about is whether, I think Margie sent copies of the broker agreement, proposed broker agreement with Will's agency.
Yeah, I saw that.
The state has provided the ability for brokers to charge, it's a flat rate, it's $20 per employee per month. And for us, it would cost, and it's a year's term, it would be a little under $2,000.
Explain for me and the public what a broker does, because I read the document, I wasn't quite sure what it was that we're paying him for.
Yeah, my understanding is that the broker will sit with employees. I think our job is to determine how much we're going to support the health insurance through the budget. Are we, we have all kinds of options, I think. Do we fund it basically at the levels that we're funding now? As Margie has said in the past.
Wait a second, before you go on though,
Yeah.
what are we expected to do tonight?
I think Margie would like to know whether or not we want to fund a broker.
That's all.
Well,
We're
that's
not
one
gonna
thing
vote on
I'd
the-
like to know. I would also like to know a timetable with dates certain where we expect to have made the decision about what path we're taking as a town on whether or not to offer health insurance.
Okay, first things first, if I may, Madam
Please.
Chairman. I know I'm not prepared to discuss what's the best approach,
Right.
because I think the board needs at least as much time as we spent with the constable issue just to discuss it.
Right.
Secondly, if we're going to address the broker issue tonight, I'd like to note that there's not much in that agreement. I thought, as I said, I read it, I wasn't even quite sure what a broker does. I know that per the discussions we had when, what was the gentleman's name who came in again?
Larry Smith.
Larry Smith.
Larry Smith came in
LCT.
and noted that the state provides, what do they call, guides or
Navigators.
navigators. and that
That's
he-
what they
that
would be
he-
doing.
That he could, that they would be able to spend maybe up to 20 minutes with each employee. So I wasn't quite sure what additional benefit right now we're getting if we were to vote on this type of thing, because I had no idea that Will's agency was even suggesting that we should enter into agreement with them.
Well, also, you can't do this until you've had the discussion about, are you continuing to offer?
Right.
No,
Health
that's true.
insurance.
If we're
Are you
not going to,
staying
then
in
we
the
don't have to
business?
do
That's
that.
right. Margie and I had actually talked about sitting down with the plans, with the budget, and trying to do some evaluative stuff to bring
With
back
anybody.
to the board and anybody else that wants to be a part of a work session. And bring that back to the board, whether it is
By
in the
October
form of-
21st.
Oh, by the 21st.
At the latest, because everybody has to sign up by November 30th.
Well, then, may I suggest that for purposes of the hour and the substance, that we focus on whether or not the board wants to get together, and if so, what date, and move on to the next subject. Because we're not going to be talking about this tonight, or that, as Margie just noted. We can't even review this proposal by Will's agency until we know what we're going to do with the insurance. So why put the cart before the horse?
Can I ask about another cart? You said whether or not we're going to offer health insurance to our employees?
Yeah, if you offer health insurance,
We currently offer health insurance,
yes.
correct?
If we continue to say that the town is going to continue to offer health insurance for its employees, and this is the rate at which we will subsidize, if at all, which we usually do. For instance, the split on the premium right now, Tim, is 86% employer-funded and 14% employee-funded. And the town has been very graciously picking up the $2,000 or $4,000 deductible as a reimbursement arrangement. And that total cost, because we went to a high deductible plan, came in less than other options we'd had prior years. Now, if you continue to offer health insurance and employees do their research in October and November and find out that they would benefit from a tax subsidy or a tax credit of X that is larger than, let's say, what the town's subsidy is going to be, and they want to say no to the town's offer, they will not have the ability to take advantage of the tax credit.
So if I may, it sounds pretty unfair if we're not going to give them insurance, some subsidy, but actually, if we're not, they would be entitled to a very substantial tax credit if they went out and bought it themselves. Perhaps. If they went out and bought it themselves. If we offer something,
And they say no.
and it may be less than what they'd get back from that tax credit, they can't say, no, I'm going to go get my own, because we've offered them something, they can't get a tax subsidy.
Oh, they can say, yes, I'm going out on my own.
Yeah, they can, but they don't get the tax
Everybody,
subsidy.
but they will not get the
They
subsidy.
will not get the tax subsidy.
Everybody
so-
is going to be choosing
So
their own.
it sounds like we're being, Scrooged by saying we won't offer them insurance, when in fact, depending on what they want, that may or may not be beneficial to them. That's
We just don't know.
the rub.
And some of that, honestly, is not even going to come out in the wash until tax time.
Right.
Because you may have people that go on to the site, and they're estimating their household income. And if it turns out that household income, when they're filing their taxes, is higher than when they first signed up in November, guess what? They're going to get a bill
Because they,
when they file their taxes, because that's when it's all going to come together for the state. Because they're going to say, well, we gave you these tax subsidies on your health premiums,
based on
for the first however many months of the year, and guess what? And by the income that we're now seeing on your tax return, you didn't qualify for that much. And so now you have to pay that back to us, so.
your tax credits are part of your premium, so you don't have to wait till you pay your high premium all during the year and then get your tax credit at the end.
Yeah.
They figured it out, so part of your premium is your tax credit, so if you lie on your form and you have higher income, you're gonna get billed back.
Right.
That's why it's as
But we can't
complicated for
have-
the employer as it is for the employee.
We can't have some people not getting insurance and some getting insurance. It's gotta be all of one or the other.
That's right.
Well, if we offer one, they can't get subsidies, right? We offer insurance,
And if they choose not to get insured under us, then they pay a penalty, I believe.
Right, but I mean, what I'm saying is, we've gotta either insure all of them or none of them.
Yeah.
otherwise they don't get it,
Yeah.
they can't get a
Yeah.
subsidy.
The insurance that we have now, is it still available after this
No,
new thing happens?
no, all policies will cease at the end of this year, so.
Depending on your renewal
Right now, we have
dates.
a Blue Cross plan for our employees, and I don't know, Tim, if you,
I need to bring Tim, I need to give you more
we need to
information.
set a date for this sit-down. But basically what VLCT did, which was very helpful, was to give us our current plan and then put side by side to that the new plans that are being proposed and the kind of impact on the budget it would have. Now, as Margie said, right now we pick up the 86% premium. We also budget for the full impact of the deductible. But the benefit that has come to the town has been that our employees have never abused the deductible. And I say that in terms of, last year, for instance, the full impact for the town could have been $105,000. And the actual ended up being $89,000. And that's primarily because they were not, hold on, I may have that.
Would it be
I
more
guess was
appropriate for having it?
99,000 could have been the full impact. But we ended up at an $89,000 figure. And that's because they did not go into the full deductible. Now, so, one of the things that we need to keep in mind is that benefit, depending upon how we compare our current budget to a new plan, we may say, okay, well, this plan is fine because it's just what we put into the budget for this year. Our actuals and our budget figures are different. So, that's just something to keep in mind.
When would you propose having a meeting to go through this?
Soon.
Very soon.
Next week.
Or two, it may take a couple of work sessions.
Yeah.
Can we do it sometime this week? Start one off sometime this week?
Yeah, Margie, we could do that.
Yep, I'm at the board's disposal.
We would need to warn that if we have more than, so why don't we let you know?
Oh.
Does that work?
Yeah, I'm just thinking
Okay.
that.
Well, I'd like to know when you're available. If anybody's interested as a little,
I'm available this whole week.
Wednesday, what is Wednesday? Oh, I've got garage meeting. What's Thursday sound like? Margie, what's a good time for you? Morning better?
morning is Morning is good, after about 9:30 or so.
All right, what if we said 10 o'clock
10.
on Thursday?
Can you send out an email
Sure.
to remind me, because I'll forget.
And we'll notice
Should I
it.
warn a special meeting, just in
I
case?
think we should.
Okay.
Just in case.
Probably
I was
have
gonna
to.
say we
Okay.
should notice that. Okay,
Do it properly.
okay. All right, does that sound all right to folks?
Yep.
All right, here's my agenda. Okay, so we'll move on, town administrators report. Margie?
Well, the bulk of my time right now is trying to organize the office and any other additional space I might need to accommodate an assistant, because I have somebody that I like who's accepted an employment offer within the framework of this year's budget for at a not to exceed 8 hours a week for just general office support. And so I'm working on that. I'm working on other recruiting and hiring issues. The zoning administrator position is open through October 23rd, I think is the deadline date to apply for that position.
Is our ZA gone at this point?
No, he is helping out
To the 18th.
to the 18th is the last Friday that we have.
Okay.
And it is of special note to the board, it's just, we are going to have a gap in service to the citizens of this town.
Being the big government shutdown as it relates to it.
A little, just a little, it's a little sequester of, but that we will have to somehow, we make interim arrangements to get people permit applications and whatnot until somebody's on board, hopefully in early November. We're also down some recording clerks, a recording clerk at the planning and zoning level, and that's a very important position. We're trying to get, the treasurer and I are working with formatting a budget worksheet for you all, and I'm just going to be soliciting department head budget requests by the end of the month. So I want to start planting the seeds for, I'm looking, I think that by the middle of November, you're going to need to meet weekly on budget issues. It would be nice, even though this is going to be overlapping with all the education and discussions on the bond vote, it would be nice to try to have a budget in place, at least in draft form, before the holidays at the end of December. You know, say before the last week of December, so that we're not frantically trying to finish up the first 2 weeks of January. Along that line, maybe even at your next meeting, it would be helpful for you to start thinking about your budget priorities, and also whether or not you'd like to invite, which we haven't done in a while, public comments up front from anybody in the public that's interested to say, are we on track with our budget priorities of the past years? What should we be doing differently? I know towns do that. I mean, obviously, town meeting is a referendum on that. The budget is voted up or down. But when you're on, out of the starting gate with several new board members, maybe it would be nice to hear from the public. And I'm trying to think of the best way we could do it. People could be here, but I'm wondering if we could also have an an exchange over Yahoo and via the website. That's another.
Oh, we could also have some sort of
Or even a call-in.
something at our town meeting in December, whether it's
Sure.
some kind of a survey thing, or even if it's just an informational thing that, this is one way to let us know. Is it chloride? Is it, I did have a resident mention, as we just recently, someone on the west side of town, who seemed to think we only had $10,000 in the budget for chloride, and, I said no, told him how much we had, but I said, this brings up the budget discussions, and it'd be really great to have some residents attending some of these meetings. It's been a long time since we've actually had members come into some of our budget workshops. So I think that's a good idea, Marky.
Yeah, so maybe we could start warning that for October, or you're also going to need a bond informational meeting, or if you choose to have one, and you could also dovetail those discussions. I mean, it's all budget related.
Right.
So that's really where my nose is to the grindstone with those, plus trying to accommodate any changes on the board level right now. I'd like to get back on to solid waste issues because the collection day is coming up, and wanted to announce again to people, to remind them of the October 26th collection at the Shaftsbury Transfer Station for household hazardous waste from 9 to 12, and 3 tires without rims up to 4 per household can be dropped off between 9 and 4.
Do you need board member volunteers at that collection?
For the collection itself, yeah, usually Craig Bruder was there helping out, so it would be nice to have another person help. What we need to do is we check residency and try to do some informational and education up front, and then feed people on down to the contractor who actually empties cars. And
So like your screening?
you just do a preliminary screen, and it's
Also
just a night. And we also, I have found, even though we get grant monies from the state of Vermont for this, we are able to accept donations, and I think anything that helps offset our cost would be great. So it might be nice to have somebody with a little tin can.
Well, it's also a time to see if residents have their stickers, too. You know, I mean, people who are coming for Hazardous Waste Day need to, be sure your sticker is either on your car or you have that second car yellow sheet of paper.
We can't limit it to
and
people
display it.
just with transfer station stickers. We found that out by last year.
Oh.
Because of the grant funds. It has to be open for all residents.
Right, okay. Well, forget that. We'll get you another Saturday. Okay, is that it?
That's it for me.
Anything else? All right, does anyone have any other business? Tim?
Just got a question for Margie. That ditch up there on Twitchell Hill, they've got a couple 100 feet left. Are they gonna do that, or are they gonna leave that?
No, they're going to be doing that, as
Okay.
I understand from the foreman.
Well, what they've done looks good.
Yeah, I thought so too.
And I was up there
But
today, and
my
the water's
unpracticed
going
eye.
exactly where it's supposed to.
Great.
That's what we like to hear.
About 100 miles an hour, but it's going.
Put a turbine in it.
Yeah, hey, man's thinking.
Mitch?
Yes, I did. I'm the liaison to the zoning administrator. I reached out to Tyler the other day just to talk to him and say hello, see, make sure if there was anything we could do better, or a better system.
That's what I need. I think the town needs to
And basically what he said was, there's no reason he's leaving other than that he's getting very busy, and it's in pretty good shape right now. The only thing that's lacking is time, and he recommended 21 to 24 hours for the zoning administrator, and that'd be in 3 days a week.
How many hours do we have? 16?
hear. 16.
So it should
Yeah,
be 3 days.
a week
He's-
would be good, even if it's only 6 hours.
That's what he recommended to me, and I figured I'd pass it on.
Nothing.
Okay, and I have nothing. So, I would,
Motion to adjourn.
To adjourn.
all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody.
Yep.